Debate live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a coffee, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Click OK, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in the Flat Earth Debate Discord server, so welcome one and all.
Morning.
Hello.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So in my opinion, humble though it is, most effective housekeeping question, if you ever wanted to break the ice of this subject, is to eradicate the base premise, the background to all heliocentric existence. And that background is a sky vacuum. Now, most people's belief in a sphere Earth based on flat Earth measurements, which is a bit advanced for your average Joe that has never come across this subject, is to take apart the paradigm that it exists within. Yeah? Destroy what is behind the wardrobe door, eradicate Narnia completely by asking them a simple question. That question is, how can you have gas pressure, like we are all breathing, without a container for the gas to press upon? It's to say, if the sky was a vacuum, then the gas we breathe would fill the space. It is a natural law. The second law of thermodynamics is violated when you assume the sky is a vacuum. To travel to get to places like Mars and the Moon, to have orbits in and around a sphere Earth derived from flat Earth measurements. So with this in mind, if on a rare, very rare occasion in the real world, I actually broach this subject for whatever reason, normally when someone asks me what I do for a living, this is the subject that I'll lead them into it with. And a lot of people have echoed my sentiment in this regard on the panel, so I don't think I'm speaking just for myself in this regard. So asking somebody about how you could have gas pressure to breathe if the sky was a vacuum is a very pertinent question, because it undermines all necessity to deal with the how of faking an area that isn't real, claiming things are taking place in areas that do not exist, claiming to talk to lions in Narnia. That is essentially what they are doing. Now, most of the approaches that people take on the flat Earth side is to pick flaw with the narrative. That is to say, take apart lions talking in Narnia. Take apart the feed for gas to get to the lamp when you first traverse the wardrobe. The differences between seasons, how these things could take place, is what typically is addressed by comparison when we take apart green screens and tubs that are neutral buoyant, big tubs of water with ISS in them for allegedly practicing what they'll do in a place that doesn't exist. Now, with that in mind, we don't typically cover this subject because we don't have any need to. We undermine it, so we don't need to. What do you mean, let's look at green screen usage by NASA? We know they're not in space. There isn't a space to be in. So why bother looking at the fakery of how they pretend to be in a place that doesn't exist? It's not necessary. But that's not to say that it's not the focus of a lot of different people. And intriguing, even when you do know that there is no necessity to do this. And with all that said, Eric Dubay has released a very good video compiling a lot of the fakery, whys and wherefores of travel through a sky vacuum, which isn't necessarily highlighted, to the moon. With that in mind, I want to interject that into Eric's video. So with the encouragement of my panel in the pre-show, I've suggested that we do exactly that. That is to say, or Mush's request, he was like, why is it the case that we'd be covering this if all we can do, incessantly almost, is interject with, you can't have a sky vacuum. None of the areas that are claimed to have these stories take place in are real. Once that's been said, is there any need to say it again throughout the video? Absolutely yes, although I didn't give him my answer fully. But I want to do that, exactly that, on this live show. That is to say, at any perceivable point that is useful to interject that, we should. If it's constantly, so be it. But I'm not going to compile a load of NASA videos, and Eric has, so shout out to him. If you aren't already, and I'm sure most of us are probably subscribed to Eric Dubay, then I will, as I would for anybody who we're covering, put a link to Eric Dubay's video. So as is the case, it's nice to do this for a change. Please let Eric Dubay know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. That's at Nathan Oakley 1980, all one word, sent me. I'll do this now. I'll do a slightly extended call to action so that people in the live stream have got a chance to actually toddle along and do this. And I will shout out a super chat once I've done the call to action or in between. So yeah, if you're in the live stream now, and there's almost 50 people watching, even though we've just started, which is good. Obviously, please share the show and all the normal things I call to action at the beginning of the show. But while I'm doing this call to action, please let Eric Dubay know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and subscribe to him if you haven't done so already, or you're not subscribed to Eric, or you've been unsubscribed, which you might find if you click on the link to his video. But leave a nice, polite comment in the true sense of the word, not feigned politeness, because it's Eric, and you can actually be nice to him if you choose to be. I don't think anybody here has got any beefs with Eric. Has anybody here got any beef with Eric? I hope not. No? Good. So you can all leave a polite, friendly comment that basically alludes to the fact that we have covered his video. And it is my understanding that Adam Meakin has attempted to get in touch with Eric Dubay in this regard. Not so, fairly recently, maybe in the last couple of months. He was attempting to get in touch with Eric Dubay to point exactly this out, which is that a lot of what he does need the caveat that we're going to be interjecting between his video today, which is to say space isn't real. It's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. It might have been on a different subject. In fact, I think it was now I think about it. I think it was on science and the scientific method. Adam will fill me in on what he has or hasn't got in touch with Eric or attempted to get in touch with Eric Dubay about when he joins, perhaps later. But in either event, I know that Adam has been trying to communicate with Eric, as I'm encouraging you, my audience, to do now by way of letting him know that we're covering his video. The video we're covering is called NASA Fraud and Fakery Exposed, as I say, by Eric Dubay. Hopefully some of you have toddled along and actually let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. And you can share with Eric something that, even though he's a bigger YouTuber than I, definitely is still under the same restrictions as I. That is to say, but for the fact he's built up a nice big audience, he's not getting shared in the YouTube algorithmic love that I don't receive either. He's suffering it from it. So more so than when it's in our opponent's best interest for me to share their link. This is not our opponent. Eric's on our side. So, I do positively encourage you, go and subscribe, go and leave him a nice comment, give him a like on the video, which is something I don't typically tell people to do. Give him a like on the video, because it is a good video, to be fair. As I say, it's not something we typically cover, so it's unique for us in that regard. Hopefully that's given enough of the live audience, over 50 people now watching, to have toddled along to Eric and subscribed if you haven't done so already, and more importantly, shared in the YouTube algorithmic love with a comment that lets him know I sent you. Anybody got any preamble that they want to add before I actually start playing out the video to give the people who've gone along to leave a comment about me sending them time to come back? Anybody got any preamble they want to add? I know a couple of you have watched this. Try that again. I know a couple of you have watched this. Has anybody got any comments they'd like to add before we start playing it? Because I know the second I press play, you're going to. Okay, then. Let's get into it.
We will now examine the extensive fabrications and deceptions promoted by NASA and other space agencies that have constructed a completely fictitious narrative and framework of cosmology and the Earth.
Didn't do my shout out for my super chat. Let's just do that. That's why it's still on screen. Okie dokie. So, shout out. Let's bring it up on the other screen so I can actually read it. 1 second. Shout out to Phoenix Rising 86 says, Nathan Oakley, you are the meek. It is written, the true appointed devil himself offers you his soul. Father used my soil to make Adam of clay. Your name is in my book of the dead, and I don't want you. Holy Jesus, what the hell does that mean, Phoenix Rising? Thank you very much for the super chat. I wasn't quite expecting to read that. I'll just read that again. Nathan Oakley, you are the meek, as it is written. The true appointed devil himself offers you his soil. Okay. Father used my soil to make Adam of clay. Your name is in my book of the dead, and I don't want you. Peace sign. Anybody care to tell me why Phoenix Rising 86 has sent that? Okay then. Well, thank you for the super chat.
I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole.
Didn't hear a word of that. Try again.
I ain't touching that with a 10-foot pole, man.
The only thing it reminds me of is, this is going to sound weird. Mike Tyson was doing an interview with a different boxer or I don't know, UFC fighter or something like that. And the guy's winning. He's doing well. And Tyson says to him, says, do you feel special when you're winning? It's a good feeling. And the guy's like, yeah. He says, do you feel like God's with you when you're winning? He says, yeah, I do. He says, yeah. He says, so it feels like God's watching over you then. He's like smiling. He's like, yeah, it does. He says, you know what that means, don't you? He says, what? He says, the devil's watching you too. That's what he said to him. I was like, bloody hell, Mike. When I heard him say it, I was like, that's pretty profound from Mike Tyson. Not that I'm suggesting Mike Tyson shouldn't come out with profound things like that. But when he said it, you could see the guy's face change. Like, yeah, if you're catching the attention because you're doing well and you feel like God's on your side, then you definitely got the devil's attention. He's going to be watching you even closer. He's not interested in bums and layabouts. Right? He's interested in you. So just watch your back. Devil's watching you too. Anyway, that's the only thing I can think of when I read a super chat like that. Maybe it's absolutely unconnected. Shout out to Mike Tyson. Right, let's get back into this, even though we haven't really started it.
The first moon landing event occurred on July 20th, 1969, when NASA's Apollo 11 mission allegedly landed astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the lunar surface.
They didn't, because it would involve traversing a second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum. You see this black bit here, just above the painted backdrop? Yeah, this bit. That would be, in their narrative, a 10 to the minus 17 torr sky vacuum. That all of the gas, if Earth is claimed to be up here somewhere, just out of shot, then you're looking back at an Earth with clouds on it. That's high pressure gas in a contained system. And this narrative has it completely uncontained and exposed to a 10 to the minus 17 torr sky vacuum. We'd all be dead if this narrative was true. There is no trips via a sky vacuum to the moon.
While Michael Collins orbited above in the command module.
Orbits, you say? See, orbits are based in measurements that have a genesis of a flat Earth. Prerequisite to measure to create the orbits.
The official story states that Neil Armstrong became the first human to step onto the moon, followed by Buzz Aldrin. Let us first explore the significant events and key figures that contributed to the inaugural moon landing and subsequent developments. We will then address many concerns regarding the authenticity of this historical event. This will sharpen our discernment and help expose this elaborate psyop that, as of recording this, diverts into itself an astonishing $72 million per day in taxpayer funding.
So far, so good. I don't have to interject because he's making it explicitly clear that this is their narrative, their story, and then suggesting in the opening this bit, that in time he'll expose the story that he's made clear isn't his or true. It's just their narrative. So I don't have to interject and say, well, no, this story, as opposed to their narrative, is a violation of natural law. He's just laying foundations, and I like the way he's phrased it.
Soon after their historic mission, all 3 astronauts of Apollo 11 resigned. The image from their first television press conference below captures their somber expressions and reflects the overall atmosphere of this mysterious interview.
I think it was Chocolate saying that said, when you see them do this interview, they all seem like someone's just taken a dump in their cornflakes. I remember him saying it and thinking, that's a really good turn of phrase, because it does look at their faces. These are supposed to be the men that have just achieved man's greatest achievement. And they look like they've just had a crap breakfast. Go
on. They have done something that no one else has ever done before. How can we judge what you should feel like having done that?
Yeah, I suppose I can't look into their souls or their soils.
A stark contrast to the jubilation one would surely expect based on one of mankind's greatest achievements in history. The astronauts' reluctant replies and uneasy behavior, coupled with an atmosphere that many perceive as incredulous, render the interview quite a mystery, resembling a calamity rather than a celebration of 3 men brimming with pride and enthusiasm.
I'd say that was a fair assessment. Would you disagree?
I could just say that they maintain their professionalism on live television.
No, okay.
I'd like to see anyone else do
fine.
that.
You can ascribe them a stiff upper lip. Fine.
James
They
Webb,
look like POWs to me.
Yeah, that's it. You can excuse it all you like. I mean, it is pure speculation. But I know they're lying. Let's just take a step back a second. John threw me off a little bit. Not much. I know they're lying, though, John. They didn't go
That's
via
right.
a law of nature violation sky vacuum to a rock, aka the light in the sky we call the moon. They did not do that. I know they are lying when they say they did in that press conference.
That's right. And that's the important part. I can make any excuse for their actions. I can come up with a million rationalizations for why they did what they did. But if you know why they had to lie, it trumps all of that.
They had to lie because they didn't and couldn't traverse the wardrobe into Narnia. Narnia is not real, neither is the sky vacuum. That's why they're morose. Because they're telling you they did.
Resembling a calamity rather than a celebration of 3 men brimming with pride and enthusiasm. James Webb, NASA's top official, unexpectedly resigned just days before the first Apollo mission launched.
I did not know that. This was new information to me. Did anybody else know that prior to that being played just now? News to me,
How
Eric.
is it relevant?
Well, it's not relevant, but it's just I didn't know it. I didn't know that.
This departure was unexplained, and came at a time when he was on the verge of witnessing what would have been the pinnacle of his professional career. An interesting photograph from 1965 shows NASA's George Mueller, on the right, visiting the MGM studio, where film producer Stanley Kubrick, second from the right, was preparing to shoot the famous space movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. Also visible in the photograph are Arthur C. Clarke, in the middle, a British science fiction writer, and Professor Teofilo Tabanera of the Argentine Space Concession following behind. Many find this photograph to further assert a studio-based moon landing.
Again, I know.
Connected.
Yeah, unconnected. It's a non sequitur. I mean, yes, you can see that they are obviously affiliated with people who are making movies. And Arthur C. Clarke essentially has given us most of the spacey type stories that support a heliocentric narrative. So yes, these people are key. They are influential. But for what they are influential for, Kubrick made a propaganda movie. government funded. He had to surreptitiously slip his own plot in, whilst they tried to retain the maximum amount of control. And he even employed Arthur C. Clarke to write a separate story. So you've got two people who are very much directly involved with government propaganda. They're paid by the government to propagandize audiences, both of them. Now, in terms of the set-based moon landing, I know it's on a set. It has to be. It's like saying, well, it could be taking place in Narnia, just beyond the wardrobe. No, it's definitely not in Narnia, therefore can only be on a set. It's definitely not on the moon. They'd have had to violate a law of nature to get there. So it's definitely on a set, because the place that it's claiming to be in the videography isn't real. It can only be a set. Not to mention the fact that the 1970s technology that was available to NASA in the 60s, that is to say, they are on the cutting edge of cinematography, was backdrops. That's what's in the moon landing. They've got backdrops. Now, if you know what a backdrop is, you can see it. Me, I painted backdrops. That's what I did when I was studying at college. Boring backdrops, painting them so they look like the scenery. Yeah, it's a skill, and it's used in movies to this day. That's how you do it on a soundstage, on a set, on a stage. Okay, so I can recognise the fakery of a set and the fakery of a backdrop. Okay, but I don't need to. They definitely didn't go to the moon. What they did to pretend is irrelevant. They didn't go, it violates natural law to traverse a sky vacuum where all of the gas we are breathing would be filling. We'd be dead. We wouldn't have any gas to breathe if the sky was a vacuum to make this story true.
All original Apollo 11 slow-scan television tapes, which allegedly contained the raw footage and telemetry data of the 1969 moon landing, remain entirely lost to this day.
This is a backdrop. This is a stage. Okay? Now, you might not see it. I can see it. I know what a backdrop looks like. This is on a stage because it can't be on the moon. It is that simple. 95 people watching. We are covering, if you've just joined us, Eric Dubay's video, NASA Fraud and Fakery Exposed. Please, as Eric Dubay is a friendly, let Eric Dubay know at Nathan Oakley 1980, all one word, with an @ sent me in a comment to Eric just to let him know that we are covering his video. I also encourage you like his video, which I will do now, and subscribe to Eric if you've not done so already.
I feel like
Even
such
more
a horrible,
suspicious,
but
NASA
Go on, feel free.
I feel like a horrible butt attacking his arguments like I am, but it has to be done.
I'm not attacking his arguments. I'm adding to them.
No,
Also,
I am.
for something to be lost, it had to exist first, right? There was no telemetry data.
If there was telemetry data, it would be with respect to a flat plane of reference, like all telemetry data. 99 people watching. Please share the show if you've not done so already. It's like 2 clicks.
later erased and recorded over other key tapes that allegedly held the original high-quality video recordings of the moonwalk, citing a supposed shortage of magnetic tapes during the 1970s and 1980s.
It is literally what somebody at NASA came up with because they accidentally filmed the Super Bowl over their wedding tape. Well, tape's really expensive. I'm sorry, love. I had to record the Super Bowl. We were out at dinner. That's why the wedding tape's got Super Bowl 35 on it. What number are we at? I have no idea. That was hopefully a good guess.
With its substantial resources and government backing, how could NASA face difficulties in procuring magnetic tapes to safeguard the epic footage of their first lunar voyage.
Now you can criticize. Go ahead.
Right. So if I can give you a legitimate reason for why they had to tape over them or how they were accidentally taped over, does it mean that they went through a sky vacuum?
Hopefully it's in the nicest of vein for Eric Dubay, if he listens to this. Right? You're leaving yourself open and vulnerable. Right, John? So if somebody does come up with the answer, does that invalidate your position? It's unfortunate.
The loss of such critical historical material is all the more perplexing. Surely, public or private entities could have even donated magnetic tapes to preserve this historic achievement. Many publicly available photos, allegedly taken from the lunar surface, intentionally obscure the true source of light, rendering it completely blocked out from view. This consistent pattern, where a strong light source is present in almost all similar photographs, clearly obscures the true origin of the illumination.
Okay. So, again, same criticism. I'm going to go with about 8 years ago, maybe. No, it must be more than that. Probably 11 years ago, right? Before Flat Earth, I bought a new computer. And at the time, the graphics card that had been promoted was the newest and greatest GTX 980. And one of the features that they suggested that they were capable of doing didn't come to fruition until the last 3 or 4 years, which is something called ray tracing. Now, the showcase for this technology, although it wasn't strictly available as hardware even at this point, it was just an idea that they utilized. That would be to say, to trace the path of the light rays in any given CGI circumstance. And the example that NVIDIA used was debunking this argument. So they said, with our ray reconstruction technology on this graphics card, we can demonstrate the path of the light rays to demonstrate how wrong moon landing deniers are when they say that the light sources don't make sense. Yes, they do. NVIDIA have traced the rays. So given that, although it's very obscure because it's tech-based and 10 years old, there are examples where literally this argument is being overcome in what could only be perceived to a guy who thinks, did they go to a place that is definitely a rock with a sky vacuum between us and it? I'll make my decision based on this argument. Well, no, they definitely did have correct light. NVIDIA have traced all the rays and show that it is absolutely possible for the guy behind the shadow of the lem would be lit. Look, here's how NVIDIA disprove your claim. Therefore, it's real. Meanwhile, the gas that was on Earth, up here somewhere, just out of frame, would dissipate into this black area that's 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. See how he needs a spacesuit in this story? Well, that spacesuit's containing high-pressure gas, so it doesn't disperse into the sky vacuum. But what about Earth? Without any containment, it's got high-pressure gas systems. They'd all disappear before they were even created if the sky was a vacuum. So when you know that there isn't a rock to travel to, and if there was, as suggested in a heliocentric narrative, an area of volume, a space between us and it that gas could fill, we'd all be dead. It undermines this argument that is debunked by NVIDIA if you operate within the narrative that there is a rock to travel to. Whether or not they did isn't debunked by the light sources. Now, I'm just going to slightly undermine what I've said by agreeing with Eric. He's right, regardless of what NVIDIA ray tracing might suggest. There is multiple light sources. It's on a stage!
Whether it is truly the sun or artificial stage lighting.
It's absolutely artificially lit, regardless of if it's the sun that they're utilising it. There might be a way of funneling the light that's natural into this scenario to achieve this effect. Doesn't matter either. The scenario, the setting, and the lighting, therefore, is artificial, regardless if it's sunlight in origin or not. It's artificial. It's contrived. It has to be contrived because there is no rock floating around our head that you can traverse a sky vacuum to get to, as per the narrative. Ding dong.
This deliberate obfuscation fuels further speculation about the actual source of light in these photographs. We also find instances where an astronaut's suit is brightly lit, even though it is on the side opposite from the sun and completely shadowed by the lunar module. This discrepancy raises questions about how the rear side of the lunar lander and the astronaut can appear fully illuminated while also being fully engulfed in the lander's shadow, given that the sun is the only light source that should be on the moon. Another obvious example of the presence of...
Yeah, again, I don't like that phraseology. When you suggest that the only light source should be there, it's akin to my irritation when people say there should be an Earth curve in the way. The only light source on the moon should be the sun. I don't know what the moon is. I don't know how it illuminates for us to see it lit, let alone what would be illuminated if I assume it's a rock with a sky vacuum between us and it. So to say that there should be a certain circumstance for the light sources, I don't necessarily agree with that phraseology, because it does imply that there would be a circumstance where natural sunlight could achieve certain effects on a rock we call the moon if we traversed a sky vacuum to get to it. It leaves that idea in the mind's eye of the person listening to this, which I don't like. Like saying we see too far. You don't have to give them it.
multiple light sources in these photographs is evidenced by the extreme difference in shadow directions. The significantly divergent shadow directions cannot be simply attributed to an optical illusion of perspective, as many NASA supporters posit, especially to the degree of divergence we see. Another highly scrutinized aspect of the 1969 lunar module's descent onto the moon's surface is the complete absence of a blast crater or any disturbance beneath its landing site. The thruster of the module was said to produce 10,000 pounds of thrust, while again, no imprint, scorching, or any remnant whatsoever of this unimaginable heat and thrust was left under the lunar module.
Yeah, there's a term for it. It's called a continuity error. Yeah? That's what that is. A continuity error. Okay? You could also call it a plot hole. Okay? But so what? It's an anomaly within a narrative that's taking place in an area that does not exist. On a rock you have no idea of its nature. Undermine it, man, at its core. If someone comes up with a reason why in a vacuum container with a bit of moon ledge dust that's a bit like powder and talc, you wouldn't get a blast crater because they show you how it could be descending to the surface of a moon that is between us and a sky vacuum. Show that it is possible to not have a blast crater. Again, that would undermine this as an argument. Go ahead, John. I assume that was your crackly mic.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, yeah, I could probably build you an argument that would be logically sound, working within this assumption of a vacuum of space that could explain it. But explanations are pointless. If you ain't going to the root of the problem.
Not even dust or debris on the landing pads. Further evidence that the 1972 moon landing was an elaborate hoax, as well as the 1969 moon landing, is found in an image that captures raindrops, each forming streaks of identical length due to the camera's shutter speed, perfectly aligned and descending at identical angles. This was NASA's very last photograph taken from the moon. Was the studio production rained out, so to speak? As many are aware, an endless multitude of collective evidence could be presented to challenge the authenticity of the moon landings. Yet such an in-depth analysis lies beyond the scope of our overall goal. The moon landing controversy alone would span numerous volumes, given the extensive information available and all of the skeptical hindsight we have accumulated up to modern day. A leaked videotape from the Apollo 11 mission shows the 3 astronauts using the command module's circular window to fabricate false images of a spherical Earth.
This is from A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon by Bart Sibrel, where it is alleged that tapes of Buzz and Neil Armstrong taking a picture that is claimed to be in low Earth orbit, somewhere that they definitely cannot be, because low Earth orbit is an imaginary convention in mathematics derived from flat Earth measurements. So to suggest that you're actually traversing in a circular fashion around a ball when the mathematics to suggest that put you inside the ball on a flat plane to measure the angles and their differences to the stars to create that system, it violates the original angle measurement off a flat Earth that creates that notion. So you stand in direct contradiction of the Earth measurements that created that system to suggest you're in orbit. But when they suggest they're in orbit, which doesn't exist, they're taking pictures of the ground by holding up a cutout against a circular window and making it kind of look like an Earth with a Terminator line. So it shows them faking it. Now, Bart Sibrel has suggested that this just happened to land in his lap as a journalist. That's his story. I don't know how true it is, but that's his story.
I object to
Go ahead.
this because they are people, and there is the possibility that they were playing a prank on someone in NASA to make them believe that they had gotten further than they had. So they might have faked a picture for fun. But what's that mean? If I give him everything,
I
it
don't
still
know.
means
I don't know what it means. I just know that they didn't go into orbit as the story suggests, and they certainly didn't go into a sky vacuum.
well, yeah, but I'm just addressing Eric because he's not brought those points up.
They also used a sheet of paper to create the illusion of a Terminator line, which marks the division between night and day. By darkening the cabin lights, the exterior walls of the window mimicked the blackness of space, thus producing the illusion of a spherical Earth captured from a distance. The astronauts captured only a small portion of the Earth through the circular window, where clouds mingled with land, producing these misleading images. Recordings of their communications with Mission Control discuss, quote, refining the realism of images in post-production. Most important, the command module's circular window was deliberately used to crop more of the Earth's surface from view. These deceptively cropped images imply that more of the Earth was not captured outside of the circular window. Consider the implications here. We have been taught that Earth is spherical, but a complete, unobstructed image of Earth was never captured from the command module. Instead, what we see is only a partial view of Earth, framed by the command module's circular window.
Just because he has evidence of them faking one picture, even if you concede that, you can't say that they don't have it based on them faking a picture.
Until you violate the area that they'd have to be in to get a picture of Earth as a sphere. Because Earth as a sphere exists only in mathematics derived from flat Earth measurements, making the area that has an... Go on, someone's off mute.
Oh, it was me. I was just going to say, if you keep on overcoming my objection, it's not going to be any fun.
Yeah, but it's got to be done. The area that you'd have to be in to take the pictures of a mathematical invention of a sphere Earth that necessitates it being in orbit in a sky vacuum, number one, isn't a real place that you could take pictures from. So the suggestion that this might suggest there's more of the picture behind the window, well, maybe, but in their narrative, to get Earth as a sphere, which is derived from flat Earth measurements, that have to be out in a place that doesn't exist at a distance that's derived also from the measurements that give them the scale of a radial equator. So, no, it makes no sense if you understand that there is no sky vacuum to go into to take these pictures from. Undermine it at its core.
And artificially enhanced with a simulated Terminator line to increase realism. Many public images that purport to show the Earth from the Moon's surface have been exposed as fallacious composites, created by superimposing falsely produced photographs of a spherical Earth onto separate photographs of a lunar surface. The credibility of NASA imagery is further called into question by an interview with NASA's senior program analyst who is responsible for creating Blue Marble 2.0. Robert Simon states that complete photographs of Earth do not exist. What we see are digitally crafted composites. He further adds, "It is photoshopped, but it has to be." Images of Earth are constructed using datasets, multiple strips of satellite images pieced together to produce what appears to be a realistic depiction of Earth. This further solidifies doubts about the authenticity of photographic evidence from the Apollo 11 mission.
Again, interesting
Objection.
to hear the how of what gets created, but the alleged picture that is created is suggested to be photographed from a sky vacuum that doesn't exist. Yes, this is how it gets created, so that you've got the image to suggest it's been taken from a sky vacuum, and it is fascinating. One of the reasons I wanted to cover this video, because it does cover a lot of these details that we just never get into. So from that perspective, props to Eric.
Right, but that is irrelevant. Eric Simmons could absolutely be telling the truth, and Eric Dubay's conclusion was non sequitur to it.
How can we place any real trust in these images, or any others, when NASA's own senior program analyst admits that there are no complete photographs of the Earth?
No, how can we trust these images when they're alleged to be taken from a place that isn't real? How can we trust the images of Aslan when they're claimed to have been taken from Narnia? Well, how did we take the pictures? Well, what they actually did was they went into a zoo, put up a green screen, took pictures of the lion, fed it into a CGI program, and got the lion to talk via CGI. That's how they did it. Fascinating. But they're claiming they took them in Narnia. So wouldn't it be more sensible to just say there isn't really a Narnia? There is no Narnia to take these pictures from. There is no talking lion isn't the best argument when you can say there is no Narnia. There is no sky vacuum to take these pictures from.
The Telegraph, on August 29, 2009, reported, "Curators at Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum, where the rock has attracted tens of thousands of visitors each year, discovered that the lunar rock, valued at £308,000, was in fact petrified wood. The rock was given to Willem Dries, a former Dutch leader, during a global tour by Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, following their moon mission 50 years ago. NASA gave moon rocks to more than 100 countries following lunar missions."
He's going to have to prove chain of custody before he can drop that on NASA's door. Can he do that?
No, but I can immediately debunk that the rock claimed to have come from a moon landing that involved a violation of natural law journey. Immediately discounts all claimed possessions from that rock in the sky with a vacuum between us and it as void. They're automatically fake because they couldn't have gone via a sky vacuum to get them. What they are is irrelevant. I don't care if they're turds, petrified wood, or genuine rocks. It makes absolutely no difference. They're claimed to have come from a journey via a sky vacuum. I already know they're fake.
Missions in 1969 and the 1970s. the United States Embassy in The Hague is carrying out an investigation into the affair. Are you aware that every NASA rocket launch in history follows an arcing trajectory, curving back down toward the vast expanse of the ocean, rather than actually ascending into space? To date, no space agency has ever presented video evidence of a rocket ascending in a continued vertical trajectory beyond low Earth orbit.
Okay, number one, there is no low Earth orbit. It's mathematically derived from the angle measurements as shown on screen with respect to an equatorial and celestial sphere. Equatorial plane with angle measurements off a flat surface, giving us all of the tracking data for the stars and their movements. That can then be extrapolated out into a heliocentric system. Sun at centre, Earth described in orbit around it, mathematically deriving positional data of the movement of the Sun into this system, based on a genesis measurement of a flat Earth. So there are no orbits to be in low Earth orbit to describe these rockets in, as Eric is doing. He's assisting our opponents by begging the question on their behalf that there is an orbit to put it in. There isn't. Now, when you know that,
He also
go on.
Oh, I was going to say he also whistled past the graveyard when he appealed to vertical and describing motion on Earth, because those vertical, parabolic, those are with respect to a flat plane.
You can't describe trajectory of anything without a flat plane to reference. So this, whatever direction they say it's going in is going to be described with respect to a flat plane. Doesn't matter how they describe it. That's how it is described. Earth is going to be measured flat to describe the trajectory regardless of where they claim it's going. Now, we could, I'm going to play his little interlude in again, because I'm now going to juxtapose what Eric's just said with a similar scenario. Let's just listen to it again.
To date, no space agency has ever presented video evidence of a rocket ascending in a continued vertical trajectory beyond low Earth orbit.
To date, nobody has shown the children actually traversing the wardrobe in a full, non-transitional, unedited shot. Nobody has shown them actually walking through the wardrobe, ever. We just see a shot of them going up to the wardrobe, and then we see a fade to black, and then they're with the fawn at the gas lamp with the snow. So what we need here is not to address that Narnia is not real. We need to demand a full non-transitional shot through the wardrobe. By comparison, suggesting that we do not get to see them leaving the ground and entering an area that violates natural law. Now, they're just going into the sky, aren't they? But the sky is not a vacuum. So what they do after the fact is irrelevant. They're not ever going to reach a vacuum. There isn't one. This is all just a pantomime.
And into deep space. This absence of footage is attributed to our new understanding that a direct upward course would expose the boundary of our contained world.
He just give them deep space. He's given the disconnect between space and outer space. He just did that. No one else did that for him.
And he gave them up.
He just did that.
You're needing a flat earth for up. Up is only ever going to be capable of description from respect to a flat plane.
Upon contact. This continued practice should now begin to reveal that NASA and other space agencies only create the appearance of rockets heading into space.
Yeah, there is no space to be going to. But within this narrative, Eric is still making the suggestion that they don't ever get to space and are lying about getting to space. So in my mind, if I'm a newbie, okay, so when will NASA actually go to space then? If they've been lying to us about going and not actually going, when are they going to go? I mean, they've been telling us that they go through the wardrobe, but if you're telling me that nobody's actually ever been through the wardrobe, well, when are we going to go through the wardrobe? When are we going to validate Narnia? I mean, Narnia is obviously there to go to, but no one's been through no one's gone through the wardrobe. What the hell? We need to get onto this. You're telling me no one's been through the wardrobe? Unbelievable. Yet meanwhile, in normality, there is no Narnia. Think about traversing wardrobe. There isn't a Narnia to go to. There is no space. There is no sky vacuum. This picture is just a picture of the ground and the sky, which is not a vacuum.
In reality, their trajectories always curve downward soon after launch.
You'll describe the curving downwards with respect to a horizontal plane of reference. This trajectory requires a flat Earth to describe it. It's a flat Earth proof.
Eventually returning to Earth, consistently over the open ocean, as observed in every rocket launch in history. The only exception to this were the rockets involved in Operation Fishbowl, mentioned earlier, which were part of an effort to investigate the limits of the Earth's upper bounds through a series of detonations impacting against it. This consistent practice prevents extended observation of the rocket's true trajectory.
So we take that as read, do we? So NASA, government-fed, government-paid agency in their endeavours, definitely dishonest, bunch of liars, morose guys in there, claim to be tripped to the moon, looking like they're sad as all hell at conferences. But also, Fishbowl, definitely true. They also rang the moon like a bell. They fired something at the moon and it rang. Definitely true. Why? Well, because they made it of themselves. Fishbowl? Why would we accept any of this? Firing stuff at the sky? Sending explosives up to the firmament? Hey? Why would I accept any of this? I know that they're liars. These people lie to us. Why would I accept anything that Fishbowl's got written down?
Leaving unresolved whether the rocket is actually heading into outer space or merely arcing toward a predetermined splashdown in the ocean.
It's just a small adjustment. Heading to a place that isn't real. It says on screen, space is fake. So why not say why space is fake? Because they're not going to it in this example. They're going back towards the ground. So they're not going to go to space in this example. But space still exists as somewhere that you could go to. It's just they're not going. Well, if we just went straight up, we'd get there, right? Where's there? Narnia? No one's going Narnia.
Thereby perpetuating a deceptive portrayal of an authentic space launch. This notable omission is difficult to rationalize, especially considering that since 1969, not a single space agency has documented such an event. Video recordings of launches always terminate shortly after liftoff, just as the rocket begins its predictable downward trajectory toward the ocean. We might begin to realize that the only thing ever sent to space has been our imagination.
Yeah, so make the connection. So it's like saying the only time we've ever been to Narnia is in our imagination. Okay, so we can go to Narnia. It's just so far we've only ever imagined going there. So when are we gonna go to Narnia? Just needs that little nuance from Eric, doesn't it? We've only ever gone in our imagination. It's very poetic. But it only exists in our imagination because it isn't real. And then prove it. It's not real because if it was, we'd all be dead. We'd never have achieved gas pressure. The very first gas particle that comes out in a story based on measurements of a flat Earth would leave the spherical surface in the mathematics of a globe Earth and enter an area of volume and never return. So with the second gas particle and the third, they'd all just leave the ground, enter a sky vacuum, and carry on in whatever vector they are traversing and travelling in. And that would be it. We'd never develop gas pressure. Therefore, space only exists in our imagination.
Throughout the history of space exploration, the release of an uninterrupted video capturing a rocket's complete ascent into space could have decisively demonstrated that no physical barrier hinders access to space.
If only we had a full video of us traversing from the outside, through the wardrobe doors, past the coats and into Narnia, we would have dispelled the myths that there isn't actually a wardrobe that can do that in an area called Narnia. If only we had the footage traversing the wardrobe.
Yeah, but you're just, I mean, the way that they have uh, progressed with their movie making technologies, I bet you they could probably give that to him now. If that's really his sticking point, um, he's in trouble.
Yeah, you're offering up an opening for them to say, okay, well, if I give you the videography that shows that exact descriptive thing that you said you need to dispel the myth, you'll be satisfied then, yeah? Space is real and we have traversed the sky vacuum.
It was
Such
in the
evidence.
movie Gravity with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney.
Yeah, well, there you go. Exactly. I'm sure it's capable of development. It's not beyond our technical prowess as people to produce that such a piece of footage.
Evidence would have dispelled any notion that rockets are merely returning to restricted ocean areas as part of a deceptive act.
Yeah, it's like saying, if we had full footage of them traversing the wardrobe, we'd see that they open up the back wall and go into a different area. I mean, that different area is Narnia, and it is really there, but they don't go through the wardrobe. That's a trick. Narnia is real. It's just they're not going through the wardrobe to say they are. They're just traversing through a hole that they've cut. And a guy behind the scenes moves a panel from behind the wardrobe. It's like, why are we discussing how they get them to seem like they traverse a wardrobe? Narnia's not real!
This oversight is as hard to believe as an architect designing a skyscraper without including elevators, a fundamental element inexplicably absent from the records of space exploration and rocket launch history. The behavior of amateur rockets as they ascend to higher altitudes is both remarkable and significant to our discussion, particularly as they demonstrate clear interactions with this upper boundary in question. Unlike rockets launched by NASA and other space agencies, which always follow a deliberate arcing trajectory back.
They do not. The people that fired off that rocket explained the noise as a retro rocket to stop the spin. That's what that noise was. It had reached its highest limit when it stopped, not because it struck the dome.
Yes, it's called the
Yeah.
yo-yo mechanism, and it fires in the opposite direction to the rotation of the rocket in its trajectory upwards to slow it down. So they fire this system, it spins, it slows the rocket, and it's called the yo-yo. That's what they call it. That's what you hear. Flat Earthers heard the noise and went, it's hitting some water. No, it isn't. That's the sound of a system that is alleged to be slowing the rocket down and stabilizing it.
No, that's the sound of stupidity. That's what that is.
I don't care what the sound of it. I don't know what the sky is, and this doesn't tell me. Go
No, I'm
fast.
talking about the flat earther was saying it, like the stupid claims about it. That was the sound of stupidity.
Yes, it's the sound of speculation from numpties.
Yeah.
Toward the Earth, amateur rockets ascend
You're out there listening to this geoshifter. Sorry, mate.
directly upward. In 2014, Go Fast Sports launched a rocket that broke world records for altitude and speed. Intriguingly, the rocket abruptly halted at 73.1 miles in altitude, as if caught in quicksand, without any explosion or visible damage. This sudden stop cleared
73.1 miles. It may have hit
Controlling
something
a
there.
spacecraft is a little bit different than controlling an earthly vehicle like a car or a plane, mainly because outside Earth's atmosphere, there's not much to push off of. Really complex. But consider this. If it's a moving part, or it creates incredibly hot and fast-moving exhaust gases, there's a chance that it might break. And if it breaks, there's not a lot of opportunity to get a technician into the upper atmosphere.
Blah, 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 blah. It's talking about the yo-yo D-spin mechanism. I'm not going to even give it this much. There's a way to explain around it.
1 second. If a rocket got up to 70-something miles, now we don't know if a rocket got up to 70-something miles, to be quite honest with you, considering the low pressures up there. I don't know if it got up there. We've never gotten a high altitude balloon. The furthest I could find claim-wise was something from NASA, I think, some years ago, which 36 miles or something at a max. And I think, and I've seen since it was less than that. NASA are saying 30, 31, or even mid to high 20s. Right. The point being is that something getting up to something got up to 70 something miles, it's likely that it ran into something up there. That's what I'm saying. I couldn't, at that kind of altitude, I couldn't say, nah, it's just a yo-yo. Because the yo-yo stopper they could use that at any point as an excuse. Let's be honest. Just because it's real doesn't mean they can't use it as an excuse when a situation not involving it happens.
That's all we need. John's purpose in doing that isn't to suggest that that's the actual explanation. I don't care, even if the yo-yo is completely fabricated and it doesn't even exist. There is no yo-yo mechanism. They were lying. I don't care. The point is that there's a way of overcoming this as an argument, right? They're saying a private rocket went up and hit the firmament, if we break it down to what flat earthers want to punt this as. And I'm saying, no, the sky's not a vacuum. That's it.
Yeah, it's a little, it leaves a little to be desired. Because we want to say, look, see, here are these videos. That's proof of the firmament. Of course, we want to say that, but that rocket video that you guys are talking about is absolutely not that. Like you as an honest person, you know that you can't make a definitive claim on that. There are a lot of videos, though. Those old time kind of videos where it looks like they're shooting things up there and then it just seems like um the smoke or whatever is bouncing off of something solid. Then you have the whole sprite phenomena where you can it just seems like shit's going on, excuse my language. Not It just seems like it has to do with something solid up there. But that's the best you got, like sprites and stuff. Like this is what it looks like. You can't you you can't really make any claims about it. The only
Well,
thing
tell
I
Brian
guess
that.
I'm going, well,
Tell
the only
Brian.
thing we can say is it's not a vacuum.
Tell Brian.
Well, what I would say is that the only rocket I saw the one that I remember taking a dead stop, the one I saw where it took a dead stop, there's no way. Well, what I'd say is that I'd find it very hard to believe that went up to 70 something miles, considering I could clearly see things on the ground below it. The angular size of things down below were just not small enough for 70 something miles. They would look more like 6 miles. And even at that, I would even say it was 6 miles, because if you're going to shoot one of these rockets, you have to make sure you're not shooting it up into the path of an airplane and stuff like that. So you have to go through all kinds of nonsense with it. I would say I don't know if they ever shot one up 70 something miles, but the one I saw that appeared, the one that people were saying was getting stopped by the dome, this nonsense, there was no way that was any more than a couple of miles up. Like, just no. Like, it just the angular size of things at the bottom were just too big for that to be whatever they were claiming it to be. If I was going to talk about the rockets, I would focus more on NASA's claims with Werner von Braun and that many years ago, Operation Dominic, stuff like that. If I was going to speculate, that'd be it. Like, but I mean, I've looked into that. Yeah, what you just said, Eli, the first part of what you just said. I mean, I've looked into as much as possible stuff to do with stuff up there in the sky, as much as I can look into it. And there's certain things you just can't get past. If you know what I mean, there's certain elements of stuff happening up there you just can't get past. I won't go into all of it now because it's not the time, but it's just like 70 something miles. I kind of doubt that. You know what I mean? Highly.
Well,
Who
no,
cares?
it's your prerogative to doubt it, but why speculate
Yeah, who
when
cares?
we know that that's
And there is
Yeah.
room for speculation a little bit. Like when I say no, not the speculation bit, but the wait a minute, we do have aircraft that can go this high. what gives. Like there is room for putting pressure on the people that are stopping us from getting some kind of result, at least the ones that we can get. Don't be mad at us for trying to be mad at them. Like,
I'm not.
No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm saying, why speculate about something when you know that gas gas pressure requires a container? The sky cannot be an area for gas to fill, and it not.
because it's not about the whack. That's whack. It's boring. Nobody cares about the fact that it's not a vacuum. We know that.
That's all we care about. Get out.
And there are people that are like, well, like some people are really interested in like the documents like Operation Fishbowl and all of that. So it's like that's something. That's not nothing.
Yeah,
That's
it's you being a conspirator.
That's
It's you
government
indulging
conspiracy, which is
yourself.
totally separate.
Yeah, self-indulgent wankery and conspiratard nonsense. That's what that is. Don't try and pretend for 1 second that you just don't find yourself attracted to the allure of conspiratard garbage. That's what that is.
A little bit. I do enjoy it.
Both of you.
I do enjoy it from time to time. Yeah, I do. But let just before there's too many fingers pointed in the direction of me and Eli, let me just bring it back. Well, I was listening in there only a small while ago, and Eric Dubay talked about low Earth orbit. Now, what was your response was, Nathan? Low Earth orbit. You're going to have to do this and this and this and calculate and measure this off a flat plane, the blah, 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 to get the orbit, right? Orbit of what? Orbit of what?
I did detail
what
that.
Exactly is this an orbit of?
Sun-centric. I did say that. But what's your criticism? It seems like a bit of a subversion technique away from YouTube being conspiratards.
The criticism is that we're not out to speculate, but yet you want to go into nonsense and talk about they use the flat plane for all the calculations for the orbit.
They did.
Yeah, I could show that's great. I could make that a tangent plane to a globe. Orbit of what?
The plane of reference, not a tangent plane. The plane
it can be an equatorial plane.
Yeah, that's
a
not
moving
a tangent.
equatorial plane. The point being, orbit of what?
Earth around the sun, moon around the Earth. What's your point?
Point is, there is no orbit.
I said that.
You would need a globe for that.
Yeah, and you need a flat Earth for the globe. I know. I did point all this out. I don't really understand why we're covering this again. Let's just carry on with Eric Dubay. We're nearing the end of the stream.
I don't know why we're talking about this obvious problem that I have. Anyway, let's go back to talking about Eric Dubay or maybe Eli and Brian and their speculation.
Feels like you're lashing out a little bit, but we'll carry on.
Clearly revealed an interaction with an unseen boundary. Surprisingly, the rocket was neither destroyed nor visibly damaged.
Eric's trying to infer that there is an unseen boundary. By inference. You don't need to infer this. It's an antecedent-consequent relationship with the gas that we're breathing. There must be containment.
And successfully reached an orbital phase. In 2017, SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket grazed along a mysterious upper layer, creating an effect similar to gliding on a liquid surface, complete with visible ripples and waves. The following images document the event.
Okay, it also kind of looks a bit like a worm. So what? Does it say what you see?
Displaying a trail that resembles rippling water streaming behind the rocket.
Fascinating speculation. There must be containment for us to be breathing. That's it. That's what I can say for certain.
This visual phenomenon manifests upon contact with the mysterious boundary, showing no prior signs of this effect.
You don't know that. You're just speculating. You have no idea.
Before impact. NASA astronaut Don Pettit in 2016 stated, "I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is, we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again."
We used to have the technology to go through the wardrobe to Narnia, but that technology has been destroyed, and we're working very hard with metallurgy experts to make the hinges to put back the wardrobe that we used to have in the 50s and 60s. Very painful and expensive process to produce wardrobes. Go on, John.
Oh, I was just going to say, they did have to destroy the backdrops.
Yes.
How can we reasonably accept that more than 50 years after the last moon landings in 1972, the technology from a far less advanced era is now beyond recovery? Displayed here is a series of official NASA Earth images spanning from 1972 to 2015. These images display several noticeable inconsistencies.
They're all alleged to have been taken from a place that isn't real. These are all metaphorical equivalents to pictures of Aslan or pictures of the White Witch. If I put a series of pictures of White Witches up and say, look, they're all different people! Clearly, these are paid actors. No. Narnia isn't real. So who cares if the pictures of the White Witch are all different? There is no sky vacuum to take any of these alleged pictures of the Earth from space from, because there is no outer space to get to take these pictures from. It isn't real. It violates natural law. All of these images are set on a backdrop of blackness. So it doesn't matter which one we pick, the area between them is alleged to be a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. So in each and every instance, the high pressure gas would disperse into the black area in every example. They're all fake because there is no sky vacuum to take these pictures from.
Including variations in the sizes of continents. When viewed in color, at high resolution on NASA's website, they strikingly resemble cartoons. In countless video interviews, allegedly from the International Space Station, female astronauts are clearly seen to have their hair rigidly set, presumably by hairspray, as it springs back to its original position with each movement of their head. This lack of natural, free-flowing movement stands in contrast to what one would anticipate in an authentic zero-gravity setting of space.
So what's zero gravity?
Zero gravity.
Yeah, so let's go through that. So zero gravity is just a moving of the scale in this terminology, right? 1 is what we would expect from a zero description. 1 is me sat here doing nothing in their narrative. 1G. Well, I'm not moving. Yeah, 1G. Well, what about if I'm falling at a vast rate? Let's say I jump out of an aeroplane. Is that 1G also? No, that's 0. If you've got stuff around you that's also falling, it is akin to an orbital motion where that body falls around Earth. So if you're falling at the same rate as an aeroplane, if you were in it for the sake of argument, falling and all the windows were blacked out, you'd be floating around while simultaneously falling towards the Earth. Now, if you did that perpetually, you could call that an orbit. And that scaled is 0. You moving towards the ground perpetually at the same rate as the thing around you. Therefore, in free fall at the same rate, we'll call that 0G, as opposed to falling at a vast rate. So we've skewed the scale to suggest that when we say people are falling at a vast rate around the sphere Earth that's derived mathematically from flat Earth elevation angles, in a mathematical concept that doesn't exist in physical reality, they have to spray their hair to make it look like that place is real. Yeah, they do.
Can I say something about the whole 1 and 0G fiasco?
Feel free.
It's the biggest farce of all that is they describe. I know because I've had this argument. If you can check, I've had this argument for years with the ballers, and I've had to tell them maybe 4 times, groups of them, over the past years, 4 times this very thing. And you can check my community post because I only put up a community post last week concerning it. If you were in 0G, they teach people that you're weightless. because you're not under the influence of a force of gravity because there was no opposing force. In other words, I'm not standing on the surface of Earth, so there's no force of down upon me. That's how they teach zero G. Now, they use that for an orbit where you're falling around the orbit, but this is the problem, right? When you go up in a zero G plane, and the zero G plane, right, does the parabolic movement and turns off the engines, and everyone in it seems to be, because they're inside the plane, it feels like they're floating. They're not floating, but they're not touching the base of the plane because the plane is falling at a slightly faster rate than them, right? So the plane is falling and they're falling. So if they're weightless, why are they falling?
Yes, bollocks. They've just moved the scale
Yeah.
by one. Falling is falling.
It's a complete load of rubbish, right?
Yeah.
Where they try and gaslight people into thinking when you're falling or weightless. If you're falling, it's because you are taking the downward vector of buoyancy, which means the medium you're in, right? The medium you're in, right, is not going to keep you up, right? Whether it be if you're jumping through air, right? Air is not going to keep you up. You won't float in the air. You're going to go down. Right, that's what that downward vector of buoyancy we call weight. So if you're falling, right, you can't be weightless. The only way you can fall is to have weight. Right, that's the only way you can fall. Right, if you go by that scenario, you have to have weight to fall. Right, now weight is just weight is only the downward vector of buoyancy. That's all it is. Buoyancy is two vectors, down and up. Right, depending on the medium, what direction you or something else would take. Point being is that I've had a load of ballers over the years trying to argue with me that I didn't know what I was talking about. And when you look into this, it's even admitted, kind of like, you know, when there was an admittance that that the horizon was not the geometric edge of a globe, it was always just some refracted position, which means they're admitting there is no geometric horizon. Not they don't have an horizon, but geometric globe edge, right? It's exactly the same. You look into it, right, and you look past as QB says, past Formica Deep, and you get to where they're actually saying it's actually not really because you are falling. So what they teach people in the school about zero G and this weightlessness thing is a complete farce. You're not weightless because if you were, you wouldn't be falling. It's, as you said, Nathan, bollocks. That's the best. I just wanted to give a few extras for the audience. Thanks.
Space. Despite several rigorous head movements, the astronaut's hair snaps back to its original position from the start of the interview, as if it were on springs, instead of drifting freely as one would surely anticipate in the zero-gravity environment of space. Why would there be a need to orchestrate such an effect when untethered, free-floating hair would naturally occur in a low-gravity setting?
Because there is no orbit, there is no low gravity, there is no gravity, and space isn't real. That is why you'd have to fake it.
If stray hair were a practical concern, simple solutions such as wearing a NASA-branded hat or tying the hair back in a bun or ponytail would suffice.
Yeah. Don't give them ideas. Because that's what they'll do.
Well, just you're going to hate me now, right? I'm going to be begging the question, right? You're going to hate me. But when people are falling in an orbit and when the zero-G plane turns off its engines, that's claimed to be the same thing. The girls in the zero-G plane don't have their hair all rigid, do they? Do you know what I mean? Let's be honest, right? The hair is flowing all over the place because they're not floating. That's why it's flowing. They're falling.
Okay, so Brian's saying if we beg the question that we do have orbits and they are comparable to the parabolic maneuvers of an aeroplane, in a parabolic maneuver an airplane when you're in free fall, at the same rate the plane is free falling, or in a parabolic maneuver, to be more accurate, their hair floats around and swashes all over their face and they have to move it out of the way. And it's comparable to NASA's fakery on sound stages with blue screens and green screens on harnesses. Therefore, it should be the same, but it isn't.
Yeah. It's a stupid thing. It doesn't matter. But I just said I'd point it out. You're not going to do it.
Instead, NASA constructs the illusion of a weightless environment in a way that is so unconvincing, even a child would question its authenticity. Numerous instances have been documented in...
Sorry, just very quickly. You can't have a weightless environment. There's no such thing as... weightless is only to do with the medium, right? Is a helium balloon weightless? In air, it goes up. It has an upward vector. So that means it has positive buoyancy, right? In a vacuum, it has negative buoyancy. It goes down.
Okay, you can't describe it in the convention of weight because it hasn't got a downward bias to describe it with that convention.
Yeah, we don't have weight. Like you can't produce weightlessness because even if I take a balloon and I half fill it with air and half fill it with helium, it'll sit right in the center of my room. But your house, any room, like any normal house, on the Earth, you have a balloon that's half filled with both air and helium sitting halfway between the ceiling and the floor of your room, right? That's totally possible. Is that weightless?
No, it's working across a different convention. So it's like saying, if you've got the tires of a vehicle connected to the ground, and what you get, the convention you choose to use is grip, right? The friction coefficient or whatever you want to describe it as, right? That's what you're describing. But then I'm going to take our convention and flip it on its head by saying that the vehicle takes off. It's an aeroplane. Therefore, the grip is negative grip. You're like, what the bloody hell are you talking about? We're in a completely different convention now. The wheels aren't touching the ground anymore. Yeah? Well, therefore, it's negative grip. It's actually providing free energy. Because in that convention, there's no longer any drag coefficient at all. You're like, yeah, because it's not touching the ground, we can't use that convention anymore. Well, if you're going to use weight, you're strictly speaking just describing the displacement of a solid or liquid in containment in air, in a downward bias. So when you say, well, what's the weight of a helium balloon? Well, I can't put it on a scale and put it in that convention. So it's a bait and switch with conventions, isn't it? When they describe 0G, weightlessness, like, whoa. If you're saying that because something isn't on the scale, it is weightless, you're like, well, it can't be on the scale if it's moving away in buoyant terms, but that's a different description in a different convention.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's put it this way. For something to be weightless would mean that it has to have zero inertia, right? This was my point with the upward rising earthers. This, believe it or not, I'm not going to take too much time, but this is important. I've had almost 1.8 or 1.9 thousand views on my most recent video, which is based around upward rising earth, right? This nonsense. It's my second video on the topic, and the video was asked to make. Now, I've had a load of ballers in there watching it, right? And attacking and arguing with me. Why they're arguing with me, I don't know. But point being is, my point in that was, if there is no weight, because they're working, let's say the upward rising earthers, they're working within the convention, that weight exists and there's a downward bias. But there isn't actually a downward bias. It's actually an illusion. What actually is that your phone sits in free space, right, when you leave it go, free space when you leave it go, and the Earth comes up to meet it, right? Now, the debunk of that whole paradigm, right, is that a weighing scale. Because a weighing scale requires something to press down on it, right? It doesn't matter if the weighing scale is coming up against the thing. If the thing has no weight, then it has no inertia. So everything, whether it be a car, whether it be anything, will all read zero on the scales. Because you can't press upon the scales because there's nothing to press. You need weight to press down on that scale. Doesn't matter if the scales is in an elevator moving up against you. It makes no difference, right? You won't move that scale unless there's a force acting against it. This is where the whole gravity nonsense comes in, right? Force of gravity nonsense used to come in. The point being is that if I have that balloon, right? No, sorry, just that debunks their upward rising earth completely and utterly. Right? There's no way, no if, buts, maybes. That the implication of what they're claiming is that weighing scales would have to not exist because they'd be pointless because everything would weigh zero, right? So, but point being is that.
Hold on.
Right?
Well, I just got a comment from Paula in the chat. She says, AKA neutral buoyancy, this quote, feeling of weightlessness. and I wanted to point it out because that's what Eric's going to get into next when he describes the
Yeah.
neutral buoyancy lab that they have the ISS in.
Yeah, well, that's where I'm going to, you see, with this. You see the balloon that's half filled with air and half filled with helium that sits in your room between this, so it's sitting halfway between your floor and your ceiling. It's not after, if it's filled totally with air, it will fall down to the floor. Not fast, but it'll go down. Filled with helium, it'll rise to your ceiling, right? But if it's half filled with both, it sits in the center. It's neutrally buoyant. It doesn't have positive or negative buoyancy, right? That's the thing about it. But that doesn't mean it's weightless. Because if you fill that room with helium, that balloon will go down. If you fill it with carbon dioxide, right, the balloon will go up. Because it's a buoyancy issue. That's what it is.
That wouldn't be right. But the moment you change the medium, you're no longer dealing with weight.
Has to be air.
Yeah, but because there's water weight and there's vacuum weight and different things. Air is the initial one, yes, that we basically weigh most things in. But there's also weights for other mediums. The point being is that when you're dealing with a claim of weightlessness, it's impossible. Weightlessness is impossible because if the medium changes, the vector can change.
Right, like us
Do you
floating.
understand?
Yeah, exactly like
Right?
Paul is saying. If you're floating on the water, are you weightless? Well, no, you're neutrally buoyant.
Yeah, you can't put, if there's a scale, if you're floating in a pool and the pool is 8 feet deep and there's a weighing scales underneath you and you float across the top of the water, the weighing scale is going to read 0. Let's be honest. But that doesn't mean that you're weightless. It means within that medium you don't have a downward vector.
Yes.
That's all it is.
Yeah. Did you have something else, John?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, that's why you put the identifier on the other kinds of weight that you want to describe. Like, if you're going to change the medium, then you're going to have to add an identifier because
a caveat,
you're not
like you're saying, like a water weight or a vacuum weight or something, is it?
Yes.
John.
And he said identifier.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I should have said that. Yeah, fair enough.
In publicly available videos where air bubbles emerge from astronauts' suits during alleged spacewalks on the ISS. Additionally, reflections in astronauts' visors reveal a scuba diver complete with an oxygen tank operating a video camera. On July 16, 2013, an astronaut's helmet filled up with water during an alleged spacewalk involving Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano. This clearly reveals that spacewalks are not from space, but quite evidently from NASA's Neutral Buoyancy Laboratory in Houston, Texas. This massive underwater training facility, housing an ISS replica, is designed to simulate the zero-gravity environment of space. Many public NASA videos display unmistakable anomalies. The following appears.
So we can recreate this place that doesn't exist, Eric?
No, the facts are we do have a place called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. NASA do have an ISS replica inside it, and they do film and train inside that. Those are the facts of the matter. Now, is there an ISS in an orbit that's derived from flat Earth genesis measurements in a reified mathematical concept called heliocentrism, where it violates natural law to be in that orbital motion? Is there an equivalent in the sky vacuum?
It's his claim. I'm just repeating it.
Say that again, Nathan. Sorry.
Is there an equivalent to the actual known to be in existence Neutral Buoyancy Lab ISS? Is there a sky vacuum for an equivalent to being? And if the answer is yes, is there one in it? An ISS in a sky vacuum?
No, because the heliocentric outer space can't exist. So.
Right. So the way this should be phrased is there is no space for an ISS to be in. they claim that the light we see in the sky is this item that we film in this pool. Those are the facts of the matter. Undisputable facts of the matter.
Well, I would add to that and say there is no globe to orbit.
No. Only
As
in the
well.
maths. Made with flat earth measurements.
To show a genuine video interview from the ISS. However, a subsequent extended...
When he says a genuine interview from the ISS, it's working under the premise that there is an equivalent in a sky vacuum to have an interview from. Like saying we need to see them not only traverse through the wardrobe in a continuous shot, but then have an interview with Aslan live. Like, there isn't a Narnia to go to interview Aslan in. But what Eric's calling for is a representation of a place that doesn't exist, for an interview that takes place on a spaceship in an area that doesn't exist.
Video glitch clearly exposes the use of a separate video layer onto which the astronauts have been superimposed onto a separate ISS video layer background.
Yeah, they have to. It's like with the backdrops and the filming of the moon landing. Or with the descriptions of why you'd have to fake pictures of Earth from space. It has to be done this way. It has to be done on a stage. Because there isn't an ISS floating around in an orbit in a sky vacuum. Ergo, it must be on a stage. Same exact principle with the moon landings. Now, typically, as I said at the beginning of this show, we wouldn't usually cover this. Because it's all surplus after the fact when you point out there isn't a sky vacuum to be in. If you know that, it's automatically deemed fake. This. You don't have to know the whys and wherefores or point out the anomalies of when this guy fades out of green screen background, making it clearly layered. Yeah, I agree with the sentiment and the exposure of the fakery and the how of the lie. But why have they got to have the guy fading with a green screen background of an ISS that doesn't exist? Because it doesn't exist in a sky vacuum orbiting around a pretend globe that doesn't even exist, that has only been reified into existence after measuring Earth flat to create it. There is no ISS in a sky vacuum. It undermines all of this.
Many public ISS video interviews clearly show outlines and impressions of harness wires on astronauts' clothing, particularly...
Yes, because they're in harnesses. Yeah, nobody's floating around. It's a set. It's a stage. They're on harnesses. Yes.
during stunts such as rolls or flips, clearly indicating their use for artificial support. In other videos, these harnesses are left visible, assuming a failure of video editing techniques intended to conceal them. While our low-resolution images may not clearly reveal these details, the abundance of online videos makes the deception unmistakably evident.
Yeah, once you know how the magic trick's done, it's pretty obvious that they're on high wire. They're on trapeze, rather. But they're harnessed up with very thin wires that you can't see in low res. Yep, that's it. That's how the trick's done. Really crappy, it's really simple, it's really straightforward. Then you superimpose a backdrop of a spaceship that isn't real in a place that isn't real, and Bob's your uncle. You've got a space story about a place that isn't real. Yep, that's the how of the fakery. Why? Because there isn't really a place above our head that's a sky vacuum to be in. Therefore, they're not in it. They must be on a stage.
On August 23rd, 2023...
Hello? Sorry. Two things I think is that there isn't a heliocentric sky vacuum, which is a little bit different from the low-grade vacuum that is up there, right? So you can be critiqued on that, because there is a low-grade vacuum, about 10 to the minus 2 to 10 to the minus 3. That's provable, right, at a certain altitude. But
Fine.
That's not the vacuum. That's not what they're claiming. They're claiming a 10 to the minus 17 monstrous, uncontained, right, outer space, heliocentric outer space. That'd be the first thing I would say, right? If I was a baller, I would be critiquing you on that. Just say it, right?
No, fine. You can describe vacuums. It's an arbitrary description that we have come up with a convention for the absence of gas in a given volume. Ergo, you can describe sea level and the pressure we do experience as a certain type of vacuum. It's a scale that we've arbitrarily ascribed to the absence of gas, and scaled up to the levels that they describe would mean that we had an empty area of volume with gas not dispersing into it in line with entropic law. The fact that we have a gradiated gas pressure system can only be necessitated by the initial antecedent of a container to press upon to form gas pressure to have it gradiated in a convention we can call vacuum. Happy?
Yeah, well, not really, because their nonsense about the vacuum starting at sea level is only them trying to insert a begging the question fallacy. What vacuum is starting at sea level that you're claiming? Right, sea level is not a vacuum. By vacuum standards, sea level is 14.7 psi, so that's not a vacuum. Right? It has to get to a certain low pressure before you're going to call it a low-grade vacuum. Right? These are standards of vacuum.
There it is. It's just a different grade of vacuum. It's arbitrary. It doesn't really matter. It's just a scale we've invented.
Yeah, look, let's move past that point. Right? We'll talk about it another time. Right? The point I was going to make until you said that was the point I was going to make is that, and this is something that people out there in the flat earth community, they attack us to say, oh, they're all about this scientific method and blah, blah, blah. Right? It's like science can be done in different ways. And they all...
What are you talking about?
They all... That's what the people out in the flat earth community say.
We haven't
they attack us
not once in this entire... How long we've been live? Over an hour and a half. Nobody's mentioned science once. What are you talking about?
I'm trying to get to the point. Give me a moment. Just wait a second. What is it they claim they're doing in the ISS?
Science!
Exactly. Right? So that's why it's important to know what natural science actually is and how it's actually established. Right? That way, right? That way you can attack that utter nonsense from just that point of view just alone. Because there they are, after all the nonsense, and we're pointing out that there's no such thing as a heliocentric sky vacuum, and there's no orbits, there's no globe. They're still claiming to be up there doing science. That's why the ISS exists, for the purpose of science. Right? What are they actually producing? What did they ever produce? Not Velcro, which is not science. The point is, they're hijacking that term. The very thing the flat earthers out there in the broader community attack us for focusing on. Just wanted to say it.
Dude, you offer a very fine line of recycled urine. So I hear.
India supposedly landed on the moon. As expected, the public only sees the initial launch footage from this significant lunar mission. Live coverage was immediately discontinued moments thereafter. This again demonstrates that, to this day, there is no continuous video documentation available of any journey to the moon, even in our most modern technological era in history. Incredible video footage that would have captivated audiences worldwide remains mysteriously unreleased. Subsequently, the only photographic or video representations of the lunar lander and command module released later to the public, and not live, were poorly produced computer-generated images of merely cartoon quality at best. Accompanying these were low-resolution and dubious short video clips showing the module hovering over the moon, characterized by unsteady and very poor frame rates.
So I showed my wife some of these Indian images, right? And after laughing, my wife has no skin in this race. She's not particularly interested in it, right? But she did question whether or not it's intentional. Are they doing this deliberately so that we recognize how awful it is? For example, using an old NASA image and then putting a layer of Indian moon landing on top of it with like literally the same footage. Things like that, you do have to question, why is it so shoddily done? Is it intentional?
It's too simple, right? And there is speculation, or people question people's morality. Some people put it in classes as if people in an upper class will do evil and people in a lower class will not do evil. No, we pretty much, with the same range of emotions, make the same mistakes any human would. I think that on a higher level, when I say a higher level, just in a different tax bracket with different relationships, I think that there are people up there playing this game as best they can too. And I think this is how some of the super simple stuff gets out. It's like somebody up there wants us to know this is extremely ridiculous, and we get the message. That's the way I feel about it.
Fair enough.
Maybe it's true for us to Lite.
I was going to say that, but we're getting too much into motivation.
But you have
The
to go into
following-
motivation when you're talking about that.
No, I realise. That's why I haven't stopped this.
Official images are from the Chandrayaan-3 mission that purport to evidence this voyage to the moon that once again a child can quickly discern as entirely fallacious. Remarkable, given that this is all that is provided to us during an era of unparalleled technology. In January 2019 and June 2024, the Chinese Space Agency allegedly landed their probes on the moon. For both of these missions, the public was only shown the launch, with no subsequent video footage of the journey to the moon or images of the Earth during the ascent into space.
Can't get those images because space isn't real. Like, we can't get images of them traversing through to Narnia. Narnia's not real. Outer space is fake. There is no 10 to the minus 17 torr sky vacuum above our heads in violation of natural law. That's why.
Given China's status as a technology
May I
powerhouse,
make a
the absence of visual documentation and
Hey Nathan.
Hello.
So
Just one
there
second,
are
Arthur.
things which are factually wrong here.
Hold on.
First of all,
Just one sec.
picture
Just
which
one second. Just one
Eric
sec.
Dubay shows.
Can you hear me? Just one sec, Arthur. Hello.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John. Then Arthur.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say the way he's framed this is to say that because we don't have good footage of space, then the space we didn't land on the moon or whatever. That's like saying because I was the person I hired to film the birth of my son didn't get the moment that he crowned all the way up to the point that I cut the cord, my child doesn't exist. He has formed this into a bad way of arguing, and it's needless.
Agreed. Go ahead, Arthur. Sorry to cut you off.
No, a few things are factually incorrect, which I could perceive. First of all, the picture which Eric Dubay shows, it is not an official picture. So people were celebrating our journey and this achievement, and many memes came out which were circulated as original pictures given out by ISRO, our space agency, but that was not the case. Although there are actual footages and videos of the rover coming down from the lander and short clips of sorts. And the second point being, also said that there is no video or picture of the journey, but those were the first pictures which the Chandrayaan sent of the Earth. They were pictures of Earth sent from a distance of a few thousand kilometers, so to say. So there are pictures available as well, officially put out by ISRO.
Right. So what you're suggesting is, so that it's not focused on, that all images purported to be from an area of volume that gas is not filling are supplemented with fake meme images, so that if, like Eric, we are to fall into the trap of presenting some of the meme images, it can be overcome with, no, here are the quote-unquote real images taken from the mission, and they're a bit less crappy than the meme ones. Therefore, space is real, and they did go to the moon. Meanwhile, the only reason in my mind we've got multiple types of crappy images is to disguise the stench of the original crappy images. And why are the original crappy images needed? And they will be crappy. Because there isn't a sky vacuum to go to the moon through. So you've got to fake it. But best that you've got all sorts of different standards of fakeness out there so we can debate about which ones are the real ones and which ones aren't the real ones. But real ones definitely exist, it's just we happen to have misidentified them. How ingenious. Best to get multiple narratives out there to argue about, because then you whistle past the graveyard. Space is fake. Gas would fill it if it was real. We'd all be dead. None of the images are real. Anything else, Arthur?
All that being true, my main concern was to point out that Eric Dubay may not have done his due diligence while giving out this information, or another possibility is that he's getting his information from all the numpty flat earthers of India.
There's a saving grace based on what we're giving. If it was to be perceived to be given to Eric, we're giving this to the greater audience, right? Although Eric may tune into this and listen. Hopefully he does. I will do a call to action in a minute and get you all toddling along to his video to let him know I sent you. In fact, I'll do that while I'm doing this preamble. So here's a link. It's going into the live stream chat now. There's well over 100 people watching. So please, if you've not already subscribed to Eric Dubay, now's the opportunity. Let him know I've sent you along. Give his video a like. Subscribe to him if you haven't already. But most importantly, leave him a comment in the format of @Nathan Oakley 1980, all one word with an @ sent me. Just so he knows how the YouTube algorithmic love is favouring him today, as a result of us sending a bit of our audience to him. Now, he's got a much, much bigger channel, but it's typically the case that when I do these sorts of calls to action, it's because it's our opponent, and I'd hope the YouTube algorithmic love would be shared. In this instance, it's one of our own, it's Eric. So, if you're not subscribed, subscribe, leave a comment, like his video, but most importantly, let him know I sent you. I'm sure he'd do the same for me if he was to make a video about specifically Flat Earth debate. Hopefully, if he was to do a response and say, no, I do appreciate outer space is fake, it violates the second law of thermodynamics, I will incorporate this, because had I have incorporated this into my argumentation in this particular instance, it wouldn't have mattered that he'd got the meme pictures, because the underlying argument that all areas of volume that you claim to take journeys through violate natural law, ergo all pictures claimed to be from space are fake, it wouldn't matter that they were meme pictures or otherwise. But this argument, because of Eric's, according to, well, I don't know if Arthur's suggesting that he intentionally did this or didn't do his due diligence, as he put it. But either way, if he'd aligned with the rhetoric of space being fake and the reasons we give, it wouldn't have mattered. But it potentially can be undermined.
Coverage from these missions is confounding. The only visuals provided were generic scenes from a mission control room filled with applause. All available images and videos, including those purporting to show the lunar lander on the moon, are of such poor computer-generated quality that even the least discerning eye can quickly recognize their inauthenticity. The few images provided that depict the moon's surface lack any semblance of authenticity, even at first glance. Can we finally confront the reality of our blind and trusting acquiescence to such deceitful fabrications? We have become too complacent, settling for the absolute minimum, a fleeting headline, the sight of a rocket climbing the sky, and a handful of dubious images alleged as evidence. This is an affront to the public's intelligence, and their entitlement as taxpayers to an acceptable level of proof of such alleged monumental space endeavors. Could our enchantment with the concept of outer space play a part, fueled by dreams of moon bases and interstellar tourism? Is it the allure of space exploration, amplified by the science fiction of Hollywood, that
Yes. Yes, it is.
has us so blindly trusting to believe such sparse evidence without innate skepticism? The topic of extraterrestrial
Oh, that's a schooling issue, isn't it? This idea that we have inherent skepticism isn't the case because of the way the education system has taught us or failed to teach us how to analyze things critically. So for the most part, most of us have gone through a comprehensive education that doesn't facilitate any sort of critical thought. Not rinse and repeat, listen and regurgitate.
Terrestrial life and unidentified flying objects is so vast and multifaceted that it could be the focus of.
Shout out to Mark for hitting me up on PayPal while this live stream's going. I don't typically get PayPal donations while the live stream's actually running, but I have today. Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate the support.
Of innumerable volumes. Public fascination with aliens and UFOs surged in the mid-20th century, notably with events such as the Roswell, New Mexico incident and the mysteries surrounding Area 51.
And as I'm on the subject, I've just noticed that a couple of other people have given me PayPals that I hadn't noticed. My email's a right mess. Thousands upon thousands of emails to trawl through, and I often miss people giving me donations. I'm really sorry. Gary and Michael, thank you so much for supporting me on PayPal. I hadn't noticed. I normally give people immediate responses and send them a thank you. But thank you. You're getting a live stream thank you. So thank you, Gary, and thank you, Michael. And the reason I've been alerted to it is because it's spun off while I'm actually using the system. So thank you to Mark for drawing my attention to my PayPal while we're live. Thank you very much to everyone supporting me via PayPal. Really appreciate it.
This surge
The
was rather
moment that
timely.
you say that a UFO, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The moment you say a UFO is an alien, you have identified it. It is no longer a UFO. So that's only a criticism I have on that.
I think you'll find it's an unidentified identified flying object. Isn't that reasonable?
Coinciding perfectly with the dawn of.
No, I don't.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Talk about the whole...
No, by all means.
Well, the whole alien agenda thing is pretty good because I followed that years back, way before I got into flat Earth. And
There's a
bit by
surprise.
bit. Sorry? No surprise. Is that what you said?
I said, yeah, there's a shock.
Oh, right. I was following that years and years ago, right? Because I'm not going to go into why, but I was following it years ago. But over time, I recently have listened to some of it again because I want to hear what's going on within that community. Some of the people who were big names in it, and there was people many years ago that I knew were frauds, but other people didn't realize it, and now they are showing it to be frauds, right? Point being is that the whole thing has changed. At one time, they were space beings from far, far distant places away. They were coming here through wormholes, blah, 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 right? And now they are beings that have always been here. They're just giving us the impression that they're from far away in some other part of heliocentric outer space. And what they actually are is demonic. So that's where they've gotten to. Isn't it strange how it's changed in a decade? Well, it's been more than a decade since I was really looking into it, but it's strange how that has changed from being beings of light and wisdom and different things who are from different parts of this heliocentric, monstrous, whatever, right? But that are actually none of that. There's actually not 50 billion different types. Because if you look into all these different alien stories, they're all CIA stories. Because they're always like, the aliens look like this, right? And then another story, the aliens look like this, some other thing. And it's like, I must have heard over the years at least 60 to 200 different versions of these alien beings, right? The most well-known ones are the Greys, aliens, and then you have the reptilian people, and that, right, and the mantis people, right? But there's a whole host of other supposed encounters, what people encountered, beings who were different, right, than any of that, right? Point being is that the people who are the most well-known in the topic and have the biggest, who will be the Eric Dubays of that arena, let's just say, they've switched from these aliens being from far away to being actually always being from Earth, possibly from underneath the ocean, and are actually have an evil agenda, or they're working for the devil or something like that. Isn't it bizarre the way that has changed? And funnily enough, what has grown in that decade? Flat Earth, which would be an enclosed system. So it's like they're admitting that basically whatever these things are, if they're real at all, whatever these beings are, if they exist at all, they're all from here because there's only here. As opposed to, or we can only know about here, we can't explore off. They don't trust NASA. We can't explore off that where NASA are saying because we don't have the technology. But it's not that it's not a globe and it's not a heliocentric space. It's that we just don't have the technology that NASA claim we have to go and do what we, or NASA have explored, but they're not telling us what it really is. You know, this kind of stuff. So it kind of ties hand in hand in some way with what's going on with us.
Space
Well, not
exploration.
really.
This captivation has endured, continually fueled by a proliferation of space and alien-themed films, along with a continuing cultural preoccupation with UFOs and aliens. Is it possible that the concept of aliens and UFOs was entirely fabricated and propagated?
I like his meme. That guy from Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, and the meme says, "I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens."
To lend further credibility to the existence of outer space. Should a boundary around our Earth be confirmed, as we intend to demonstrate, the entire notion of aliens and UFOs would immediately become purely fictional and obsolete. I believe that any legitimate...
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, every single notion of extraterrestrials, that is to say soil in the sky where people can come from, is immediately eradicated when you understand that we are in a contained system and the ground is all we've got. The ground is the ground, the sky is the sky. The ground isn't in the sky. The lights in the sky aren't the ground, they're not soil.
Legitimate reports of UFOs or mysterious aerial events, which are not based on unsubstantiated claims or ambiguous videos, are potentially orchestrated by space agencies like NASA. This is done to promote and reinforce the concept of infinite space, entirely contrary to our contained system, which was discovered. Given NASA's extensive budget, it is certainly possible.
He did it at the end of the video instead of the beginning. Dang it.
That considerable resources could be allocated to deceptively stage and simulate encounters or incidents with aliens and UFOs, past, present, and in the future, as part of a broader agenda. Such an agenda could be crafted to effectively unify the world's population by staging a manufactured crisis, specifically a fake alien incident of sorts that necessitates worldwide unity. This would lay the necessary groundwork for creating a single worldwide government and possibly a universal currency, a planned agenda that many have warned of for decades.
Already exists. One world religion is heliocentrism. Yeah. I used to think it was a Western world religion. Now, having spoken to multiple people on OME TV from across the plane, everybody's got the same indoctrination. It doesn't matter where you're from anymore. Everybody has the heliocentric one world religion given to them in their education structure. There are no exceptions as far as I can tell. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's going to be some tribe somewhere that someone's going to go, this tribe, yeah, I don't care. Generally speaking, in a cultured society, regardless of which one it is, worldwide, you will be taught the one world religion of heliocentrism.
So Nathan,
This
what
could
did you think
expand
about
the
what I had
role
to say?
of an executive.
I think it is fascinating. I mean, changing your position would infer, based on what you've said, that they have already got the knowledge that they need to adjust what they say to fall in line with the actual describable world that we do inhabit. But I think I went silent because I do think it's a step too far. They would have to have that knowledge and know that preemptively they need to change their narrative to fall in line with that. It's too many steps.
I wasn't stating that the people, like some of the people I'm talking about, I wasn't stating that they are intentionally doing that or working off a script. I'm saying that these are people who, at one time, you go back 10 years ago or more, were talking about alien beings from distant galaxies, blah, 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 in a heliocentric sky vacuum. Whereas now they're talking about them being from actually always being from Earth, and that they're actually manipulating
Yeah, I
mankind.
got all that.
It's like, yeah, but the point being is that I'm not saying that these people had a script, they were like a CIA script that they were working off back then and are working off a different one now, another CIA script. What I mean is that they've changed their position because bit by bit by bit, it just became not tenable, if you know what I mean, to them. It's like they're trying to work, they're still in a heliocentric paradigm, but they're not thinking about these beings that they think are there in ships or whatever.
I do
Then-
see the connection. I think it's tenuous at best to make those steps that you've done.
Which steps did I make?
From the necessity for it to be internal versus a requirement that's beneficial to the heliocentric one world religion of it being external to the terra firma we inhabit. Now you're saying, isn't it interesting that they're now incorporating into a worldview that excludes the extra terror of the lights in the sky in their current ideas that they peddle? Yes, and I can draw that connection, you can draw that connection. I just don't think they necessarily could be proven to be making that connection, therefore have it as the motivation to do that. That's a stretch.
No, I'm not saying they are. Sorry, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the story, see, they're manipulated by the likes of these, they're manipulated by the NASAs and the CIAs, right, as well, because they're being completely hoodwinked, right? They're being manipulated too. And bit by bit by bit, their stories, because these people, they're constantly over the years meeting insiders, people with inside knowledge who used to work for this agency or that agency, who know about this thing or that alien race. And they're feeding these people knowledge, right, bit by bit by bit over time. And the insiders that are giving them their information are changing their position over time and changing the position of the content creators who are promoting this stuff.
Okay, you've managed to massage it into.
Being manipulated.
I gotcha. Yeah. You've managed to massage it into an acceptable narrative where it's not too much of a stretch. You've just spread it that much thinner in terms of how general societal narratives are woven by the powers that should not be. Fine, you've done a blinding job.
All right, shut up about it, because you didn't say that, so I thought, is he taking me out to be some kind of a conspirator?
No, I'm not. I'm not suggesting that you couldn't easily prove that they have changed their narrative in the way that I can even picture it in from shorts videos of people talking about this stupid crap. So I'm not disagreeing with you or suggesting that you detailing something that is currently happening in the UFO community that you had experience of years ago isn't true either. I'm not calling you a conspiratard for it. Stop being so defensive.
No, I don't mind if you were. I just wanted to get your opinion. That's actually all I wanted.
No, you got it.
I just wanted. If you were thinking it's just conspiracy, then you're not going to give an opinion on it.
I do think it's interesting. It's just I would have been critical, which is why I didn't say anything in the first place. I just pressed play. Ed?
Guess I kind of missed it. What was the like a quick brief summary of like the UFO community?
Bloody hell, Eli! Really?
That take all day.
I'm sorry. I want to know.
They used to say aliens come from outside, and they're like, imagine describing angels, but aliens, right? Just that sort of idea of an external above us, not part of terra firma. Then their current narrative being more in line with these demons are already here, but instead of demons, it's aliens, and they're coming from beneath the ground or from within the Earth that we already experienced, and they've always been here. That's what Brian is saying, that their UFO narrative is shifting towards. Okay?
Okay. It's just more of it's like people who are still, in the red versus blue politics. It's like within I'm just saying,
I did
within that one given, you have all of these other offshoots and offsprings of ridiculous stories and narratives that could potentially happen. And it's all really just BS.
Oh, wow. How did you start researching this?
Can I hear some positive reinforcement for how great Elijah's mic sounds? Just give him some positive reinforcement for that.
It does sound really
To
good.
motivate him to keep it up. How about that? How about some positivity here?
What are you babbling about?
Well, I did the same for your show. I mean, I took to heart you saying don't come back with a bad mic, so I'm trying.
Subtle, very subtle.
Existing international organization, such as the United Nations, to become the world government, paving the way for a new world order. Historically implemented by rulers and governments for centuries, this is known as order out of chaos. It involves deliberately creating a crisis to force a pre-planned resolution when people are most desperate for it. This agenda might not be as hard to imagine, given that the Latin phrase Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages, has long been inscribed on the US $1 bill, quite synonymous, to say the least. It is also noteworthy that the US $1 bill features pagan symbology, such as the all-seeing eye, alongside imagery reminiscent of a pyramid.
He made such a great point about the system we exist in needing to be contained. It was a statement of fact. And now he's going into symbology of new world orders and things like that. I feel like he's gone way off in the left field.
You can't deny
this-
the attraction to the masses. This guy's got a lot of subs, and this video will get a lot of views and a lot of comments. In spite of that, I'm just going to do a quick call to action. It'll be the last one, I promise. Please let Eric Dubay know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a polite comment that lets him know we've covered his video. Hopefully, subscribe and like his video as well. Go ahead, QE.
Is this a stroll down memory lane?
To an extent, yes. I want to interject the stroll down memory lane with second law of thermodynamics violation, sky vacuum undermining of the entire argument.
Fair enough.
Pyramid from ancient civilizations. What connection could possibly exist between the United States, ancient pagan cultures, and the all-seeing eye that continues to persist on the US $1 bill to this day?
I don't know. Has it got something to do with baking? Cookery? You tell me.
When will we acknowledge the growing evidence
All right, maybe we'll never find out.
of a grand and carefully crafted deception? To what extent are we willing to ignore our intuition, logic, common sense, and reason merely to conform to popular consensus, go with the flow, or avoid confronting internal conflicts and thereby deny deeper truths? It should become clear that the concept of outer space has been entirely fabricated with a discernible motive.
Nathan, 1 second. Pause, please.
Go ahead.
Why is he giving motivation?
That's the end of the video, actually, but go ahead.
Yeah. You know what? Eric Dubay has been reinvigorated, I reckon. Because what was happening when Eric Dubay first turned up, his rhetoric was pretty much the same as it is right now, right? Go back 10 years ago, right? 10 years ago, right? Over the course of time, we turned up very soon after him, more or less. And bit by bit by bit, I won't call it rhetoric, but our position on how to deal with this problem has been shown to be the absolute best. Where if you want to make your point and prove what you're saying and get your point across and prove your opposition to be incorrect, our direction is the direction. So we were, right, I don't mean this in a bad way, but we were kind of killing off Eric Dubay and those like Eric Dubay up to a point. But now that TikTok has turned up, what Eric Dubay is saying there, see that video? If I'd say the views that will get on TikTok, or probably will get on TikTok if it's on TikTok, it will be phenomenal because there's so many people who will gravitate, I have to use that term, towards that. Like there's so many people that will gravitate towards that because there's so many people who are on TikTok now who are like we were many years ago, except for the difference is most of them are younger than we were many years ago. So when I got into this, you're talking 35, 6, I'm 47 now. But no, maybe 36, 37, maybe 37 when I came across that. I'm now 47, right? Something like that, right? So what's going on TikTok is you have people who are in their teenage years, right, who are coming across stuff, and they're coming across Eric Dubay type stuff, and they're loving it now. But in fairness, they're a lot more naive than I was when I was 37. So they're far more easy to manipulate. Now, I'm not saying Eric Dubay is manipulating them. I'm saying the use of that type of stuff and the Feast of Nonsense is far more powerful on them than on us. Because we were like, Feast of Nonsense, yeah, but then very quickly that started taking a backseat because we're like, well, I don't know about that. Whereas with TikTok, I don't think it's taking a backseat. There's people trying to argue for ice walls. And they will argue for ice walls way past the point we would have because they're younger. I don't think they have the same wisdom. They don't have the same experience in life. So consequently, they're basically they're going to be unless they take on board what we have been doing, they're going to be facing a very steep hill, if you understand what I mean. But the likes of Eric Dubay will be very successful because he's putting out the very things that they want to hear. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're saying that this. I couldn't agree more. It's catering to an agenda that's, number one, promotable. You know, Feast of Nonsense is going to be easier to promote within someone like TikTok's algorithm, like it used to be 10 years ago within YouTube's, is what you're saying. Therefore, people lap it up because it has that aspect of fantasy and conspiracy to it. So when people, like we did in the pre-show, we covered a guy that's talking about what flat earthers are, according to him, and everything that Eric Dubay has covered would aid that stereotype. Oh, well, they're all conspiracy theorists in the CIA term. Well, this aids it, doesn't it? That's what you're suggesting would be the reason they'd get lapped up, I assume?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you have people who are 17 or even in their early 20s, but let's say you have a load of people on TikTok who are flat earthers who are 17, right? Let's say as a median age, we'll say 17. That's between 15 and 21, right? We'll say 17. Then you've got a lot of naivety there to work with. You know what I mean? And naivety is like a beautiful blank canvas or a beautiful load of dough. You can really make something out of that. You know what I mean? Whereas with us, that dough went off very fast, and that canvas got dirty very fast because we were older. We like let's take Adam. How long did it take Adam to stop focusing on the Feast of Nonsense? Not very long. Do you know what I mean? Because Adam was already wide to the world. Adam was already a very logical thinker, and Adam is obviously well above the normal intellect. So, right, but he needed to have the wisdom along with the intellect and the experience in life along with the intellect. Whereas on TikTok, I think there's a lot of people who don't have that. There might be very smart younger people. I'm not saying there isn't because that would be a stupid thing to say, but you just can't gain wisdom, and more to the point, you can't gain experience in life in the same way. You know, if you're only 17, you're not going to have it like you will have at 37. You just won't. There's no way around that. You haven't experienced all that, and you haven't matured. So it's a much greater long game, and it's a much bigger canvas to work with. That's kind of my point. It suits them.
Well, it suits our opponents to have us argue in a certain way, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that's why you have like that video the other day from your man Dean Stingray. I got angry at it immediately because he makes me angry because I know what he's doing. I know he's going for the easy fish. But that thing he pointed out, that will stump a load of people who don't know any better, who are young people on TikTok, who are talking about ice walls and domes, whether they exist or not. Go on, Eli.
Sorry, there is a new playing field, though. Like, we can't be pessimistic when we're thinking about young, impressionable minds. I mean, if you can remember back to 16 and 17, like, some of us were thinking beyond the rest of the group. I just have to believe that there will be those out there that can point out things just as fast, if not faster, than we have. That might be the case because they have access to a lot of information, just like the disinformation agents do. So I don't know exactly how it will go. Sure, I understand what you're saying about them being totally into the Feast of Nonsense stuff, but I won't count them out just yet because they got us for one.
No, I don't count them out. I just think that they're playing the long game. I think it's more of a case of they might see it as a losing game, but they have to get some control over the situation. They've got to play the long game, and they're using it in that way. Like, technically, you're probably the youngest member of the FED panel. Are you? Well, maybe you're probably the youngest. You're in your 20s, aren't you?
So maybe.
Sorry?
I'm 35.
Oh, 35. Well, you're still young, in fairness. Like I'm 47. Nathan is a few years younger than me. Adam is a year or so older than me. Huey's older than Adam. Neil is in his late 50s. John is, I'm not sure what age John Refracted is, but he's probably close on my age, or in between your age and my age.
Same age as me.
So we're all, yeah, okay. Well, so my point is, we're not all 17. You know what I mean? So, yes, what you're saying is true, Eli. You'll have a lot of younger people who will cop on, but the problem is, younger people in general, I think they're easier to manipulate, right? I think they're easier to manipulate because they're more distracted. Let's be honest, aren't they? When you're 17, how many things are distracting you?
Yeah, but in America, like you have things that will happen that can wake you up. Election cycles are one of them, because if you can pay attention for 8 years to everything, that wakes you up. That's where I came from. There's a load of people on the other side that should be in this room or should be listening to the show, because they're talking about logical fallacies, probably because, I never heard it before, but now it's, in conversation everywhere, and people are trying to think through the BS. But there's always going to be events that people who are paying attention get a chance to see that'll wake them up.
Yeah. Well, something that hit me during that show, right? This is to do with our opposition with the ballers, right? I said that my last video, this is my most recent video, it only came out a week or two ago, has 1.8 thousand views. Now, people out there go, yeah, well, that's nothing. But it's a lot for my video, considering I have 1.5 thousand subscribers, and that took me years to get that, and I'm about as suppressed as you can get. Like, there's no one that could be more suppressed than me. No, there might be some as much as, obviously, in our arena as suppressed as me, but there's no one more suppressed as me by YouTube, right, in the world. And yet I have 1.8 thousand views. And I have a load of ballers in there, right, wanting to argue with me. And I couldn't, it was just during the show it hit me. I was thinking, not that this thought hasn't hit me, because it's hit me in the past with I'd attack dielectric acceleration or the ether or something, and the ballers are being the same as the last time I attacked the upward rising earth. The ballers are in. Like, okay, it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You could see it that way, but no, it's not that. It's that they see upward rising earth as hindering us, so they'll help that against us, right? Against the facts. They'll help that just to cause division and keep things problematic for us in our own arena. So that's what they're at. They literally go in and help the upward rising earthers or the Assyrians or the dielectric accelerators or whatever, right, against us and anyone promoting what we promote, because we promote facts and truth. And that's the problem. And the ballers, because they're lowlifes, these trolls, they are going in, helping out these people and helping out. Like, I have the people, the upward rising earthers, they stopped communicating and commenting a week or more ago. Yet the ballers are still in there communicating and commenting. It's like, why are ye worried about this upward rising Earth thing that's purely within flat Earth? Why are ye so worried about this? Why are ye here? Because ye want... Go on, John.
It's part of their narrative. Just like space-time is ether, the upward rising Earth is the, that's how Einstein describes gravity on Earth.
Yeah, it does debunk Einstein. I'm not saying it does. I'm not saying that my video doesn't debunk Einstein, and I was aware of that when I made it. But I didn't hardly go into that. I was purely focusing on now. But the ballers, these same ballers, all they want to talk about is gravity as a force, right? Why? Right? It's so. Yes, you're correct. It is debunking their current gravity claims, right? But the point I'm making is, I don't think it's just that. I think that they're actively trying to help out people like the upward rising Earthers to cause us a problem. So it is the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. Go on.
No. They're actively helping them because the things that those flat earthers are promoting are part of their rhetoric.
Yes, that's true. I that's what I said a second ago. I'm aware of that. But I think it's a bit more than just that. I think there's a secondary thing. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Well, let's ask. Like you've made your statement on it. I've said what I said on it. Let's hear other views. What do you think, Nathan, or Eli, or anyone?
I don't know. I don't really know why we're discussing it.
You're a conspiratard.
Well, hang on now. That's not conspiracy. There's something actually happening. I mean, calling me a conspirator is not exactly addressing us, is it?
Yeah, it is.
All right, go back to whatever you were doing then.
Okay, thanks.
If Neil was here, he'd be agreeing with me.
How is Neil? I spoke to him a little bit, and he just said Iron Man's rusted is my most recent update. Has anybody got anything better?
No, I haven't spoken with him.
You know what I was doing?
Go on.
Summarizing quantum field theory while all this was going on.
For what?
Did you just make a big fart noise?
It was something somebody said during yesterday's show. So I said, you know what? I've never really written up anything on quantum field theory. I've heard people say the phrase recently, and I said, you know what? Let me go ahead and summarize it, or go through it and then summarize it. That's why. I've spoke about it, with all the inherent contradictions. I just never put pen to paper on it. So I figured I'd do that.
Three things that can't work with each other. That thing.
Yes.
Quantum mechanics, Newtonian, and then Einsteinian gravitation. Yeah.
It's a little more than that.
Not much more.
Really? Sounds like you don't know what quantum field theory is.
Have you got a presentation you're getting ready to do on this?
Really? Tell us more.
I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be a presentation. It's just for me. I like to write stuff down and put it in order. So I just have it for me. It doesn't have to be a presentation. It strikes a chord. I've always done that. Not always. Ever since my university days, I've always followed that.
Sounds like a good presentation.
Might be.
You know that extra bit you're talking about that you think I don't understand? You know what that is?
This is ego coming out. You're going to over-egg the pudding, dude.
No, not ego. You know what that is, don't you?
What?
What that's leading to? The graviton.
Gravitons? Really?
Yeah. Yes.
Was that quantum field theory too?
That is what's leading to quantum gravity and the graviton. That's the precursor.
So what's quantum field theory?
A mixture of quantum mechanics, general relativity, and Newtonian gravitation.
Yeah, you missed a couple.
Okay, tell me what I missed.
According to the Department of Physics, Utah State University, March 2023, the traditional physics curriculum supports a number of classical field theories. In particular, there is the Newtonian theory of gravity, idiots, based upon the Poisson equation for the gravitational potential and Newton's laws. So we got Newton's theory, actual law of gravity, and Newton's laws. 2, electromagnetic theory based upon Maxwell's equations. That's not a theory either. And the Lorentz force law. I'm not too concerned about that. Both of these field theories appear in introductory physics courses as well in upper level courses. Einstein provided us with another important classical field theory, a relativistic gravitational theory, be it his general theory of relativity. So we got special relativity, Newton's law of gravitation, which they call a theory, Newton's laws, Maxwell's electrodynamics, and the general theory of relativity. Coincidentally, in a shotgun marriage with quantum mechanics. Incidentally, special relativity, Newton's theory of gravitation, that's not a theory, Newton's laws, Maxwell's electrodynamics, and general theory of relativity is all debunked by quantum mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. But the Maxwell element, I don't think that needs to be mentioned in any way, shape, or form, because that's just something they have to address. It's like they can't not address magnetism and electricity. They can't not address those. So they have to have them as part of it's like saying they're not addressing matter and energy. You know what I mean? It's like, so that's just kind of like a byproduct. Like they're throwing that in there for fluff. It doesn't mean anything, you know.
Fluff.
Yeah, it's just fluffing it up, like, you know, bigging it up.
Patty means padding.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's like a stripe along your car that gives the people the impression it's going to go faster because you have a stripe on it.
Is that why the police
funny.
cars? Is that why the police cars are used? Did you used to have those in Ireland? Jam sandwiches, what you called them? Police cars with they're white cars with a red stripe down the middle.
No, we had blue cars with it. I'm not sure if there was a white stripe, but it's been a blue car.
A good sidebar. So the classical field theories, each of them are not scientific theories, by the way. Special relativity, Newton's law of gravitation, that's not a theory. Newton's laws were definitely a scientific theory. Maxwell's electrodynamics most surely is not a scientific theory. And a general theory of relativity is not a scientific theory. So you got classical field theories that are not theories, by the way.
Yeah, because you have a load of debunked nonsense that they won't concede is debunked publicly, and they're trying to latch it on to quantum mechanics that gave us iPhones and, you know, MacBooks and everything else.
Photodiodes. You missed it yesterday, Nathan. Boy Wonder the Sky Grifter, and was having a little discussion with you on the show, and John jumped in to tell him that the translational wave doesn't marry up with the photoelectric effect, and Whitsitt said that he debunked the photoelectric effect. He shouldn't have done that. One step too far.
I remember that. I was speechless. That was like I didn't know what to say back to that. That was just so dumb. I didn't have nothing.
But Whitsitt is, you see, when I was speaking earlier about the people on TikTok, Whitsitt is that guy. He's this young, impressionable, naive, no wisdom, making claims like that. Who would make a claim like that publicly before you've actually shown and proven any of it?
Before you've shown and proved it. But
yeah,
it would have made more sense. It would have been more logically coherent if he would have said he debunked fire.
Well, how can you debunk something? How would you possibly debunk the photoelectric effect?
You can't.
That's the point. How do you debunk it?
Yeah, I mean,
It's an effect. You can't debunk an effect. It's absurd.
Yes.
That's the least of his problems.
he's the David Pacman of flat Earth, man. I'm telling you, it's like
What lack of wisdom would an individual have to make that statement out of ego and maybe even believe it? Maybe, like what does he, what, I would, see, this is the thing, you probably not want to hear it. I want to hear what it is that he's done to the point. Has he actually done anything? Even. Do you know what I mean?
I'd love to see it.
Yes. Well, for Brian's benefit, the photoelectric effect, the critique is it reifies a photon. And if you disprove photons, you disprove the photoelectric effect. At least that's the logic that it was employed. So by proving that light's a wave with all the other question proofs, you debunk photons, therefore you debunk the photoelectric effect.
Yeah, I was aware of that. And I appreciate you saying it to me. I was aware of that fact. And I was, because I remember hearing him say that. But the point I'm making is, did he do anything? Like you'd have to debunk the photon. How did he debunk what did he do? Do you know what I mean? Did he just sit around and postulate and say, I debunked it? Sometimes you can do that. If something is faulty, you can do that. Like gravity, it's easily, a force of gravity is debunked by simple things like vacuum waves. So, go on.
I'm going to help you out with this conversation you were talking earlier. So, do you think photons exist?
Photons? Yeah, that's it. That's what light is.
Okay, you're an esoteric believer. That's the new hotness, bro. So the new hotness is that people who believe in photons, people who believe in relative density, et cetera, we're the esoteric
ones. What?
This is gaslighting, right?
Yeah. No, I'm not, dude.
Well,
Look, this is a vibe that's going on in the TikTok and Twitter spheres. And it's also just happened here the other day. So while we were doing our show the other day, an upward rising earther came in and dropped a video about a lady basically calling out people who believe in relative density, disequilibrium, and how it started and how it is essentially an esoteric belief.
How can it be an
esoteric community?
Proven through the scientific method. It's accepted officially. It is what it is. It's like it's not a belief. It's not my belief that a helium balloon goes up when I leave a go in my room, goes up to the ceiling. That's not a belief. That actually happens.
Because they think that they'll say like, oh, their minds have been, tricked by language. So, whatever language they're using to describe things, we can just repurpose it for whatever we believe, because it's our right to think and do what we want and discover the things that we want to discover. Like, that's their thing. So when he says photons are debunked because he's reimagine them to be like little BBs that should fill up in like in a camera lens or something.
They kind of do that though.
You mean we could dump them out of our digital cameras? After we take the picture, we have to open up a little hatch and we dump all the photons out?
You pour them into a jar.
We think that. And they're like, exactly, that's why it's dumb, would be their response.
Wow. Really? Is that what they think, AI? You're on the cutting edge out there in TikTok universe, right? Is that the cutting edge out there?
Kind of.
Kind of. Really?
So when we have the photographic plate and these dots start appearing on it, we are reifying photons?
What exactly?
Can I just state, just because AI brought up there was an upward rising earther who posted a video. When I pointed out in the videos I made about how weighing scales would have to not exist. The weighing scales wouldn't exist to be a completely pointless apparatus. They never would have been invented or created. You know what I was told by these people? The main comeback was that it was a straw man. Right? So that's what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. They don't even know what a straw man is. Right? They don't even understand that. But supposedly that's a straw man. And this is one of these people. Like, how we could be an upward rising earther after watching my video or after my videos came out. I don't know. I don't get it. But it's not about me, just about it's logically impossible. But the point being is that these people are still around and they're coming in posting videos. It's like, what? So a helium balloon doesn't appear to go up there. You know what I mean? My phone is not falling down. What point are they making?
It's just a useful way of incorporating the equivalence principle into flat Earth rhetorics. Same as having pizza pies floating up in sky vacuums, right?
Yeah.
You said earlier that you had ballers right at the beginning of this. You said that you had ballers that were defending it and you didn't know why. Now, because you were on a bit of a roll, I didn't want to interject, but I'm like, well, because it's their rhetoric too, in the form of the equivalence principle, right? That's why they're defending it.
Yes and no, because the people who are defending it are thick. There are loads of these trolls who are keep on promoting a force of gravity. They won't have that. They would, when I bring up Einstein, they don't want to deal with it. So I don't think it's just that. I don't think, because most of them don't even understand Einstein. They think that general relativity and Newtonian gravitation just work hand in hand. All the mathematics work together. They don't understand. They just can't seem to grasp how these two things are completely different. Just because both things are called the same name doesn't mean they're the same thing, if you understand what I mean. They don't get that. So I can only go off of the people I'm dealing with. Now, I could say they're smarter than they're letting on to be, blah, blah, blah. But I can't say that because they keep making stupid mistakes. You know what I mean? When they're commenting to me, they keep getting things wrong. So, you know what I mean? To the point where some of them are so dishonest to have to remove them because they just won't concede that they've just been obliterated. So I think some of it you could say it must be because of that. Most of these boys don't even understand anything, the first thing about general relativity. The people they look up to are people like Blue Marble Science and whatever else. And for how many years did those people not understand anything about it?
It's propaganda, Brian. Why do you think the topics that we deal with when we're reactionary come in waves? One month it was Coriolis. Another month it was second law of thermodynamics when they are like, well, why does gas pressure become less when you get hot? Whatever it is, it always came in waves. It's because it's propaganda. It's coming from somewhere.
Yeah, you're saying like there's nearly like a media manipulating them?
They believe what they're saying. They just don't. They haven't thought about it because they've been propagandized and they're just doing what they think is right, I think.
Yeah, well, it does come in waves because I'm sure, more so you'll see it obviously if you're hanging around. Like,
does it come in waves? Hey, AI. The wave is the medium.
The wall is the medium.
AI, the wave is the medium, dude.
Right, you're not getting a response. So on that note, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show. No, it's live show, isn't it? It was still live. Making today's live show possible. If you're watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. But unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.